Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Thank you. We always start our meetings. Welcome tonight. What's our date? Thursday, April the 3rd. We always start our meetings with a land acknowledgement. I'll read that this evening. The land on which the city of St. John or Mennequist is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pescatawamacati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. And I ask everyone to take a few moments to think about those words and reflect. Okay, I'll ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next is the approval of the agenda.
Take an approval of the agenda, please. The Deputy and Councillor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next, disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Not seeing any. Next item.
And next, we are into our public hearing.
Okay, this one I'm sending over to Pankaj for the introduction this evening. Pankaj is our Director of Community Planning here at the City and Housing.
Okay. Presentation.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. This is the second public hearing for the rezoning application at 221, 251, and 271 Lancaster Avenue, submitted by JD Irving Limited, which includes three PIDs, PID 551-46310, 551-46328, and portion of PID 551-46302. The initial public hearing for this application took place on February 10th and was continued on February 24, 2025. Following its closure, Common Council resolved to refer the application to the CAO for further discussions with the proponent. Since then, the proponent has amended their application by submitting additional information regarding community contributions. This public hearing was necessary to ensure procedural fairness, provide the broader community with an opportunity to review the amended application and share their views, and allow council to ask questions of the applicant on the amended application. The application proposes a 500-stall surface parking lot on a portion of the Willistook Park site to support the construction activities for the next-gen project at the Irving Pulp and Paper Mill across the Bridge Road, with future use for maintenance shutdowns at the facility. The applicant is seeking to maintain the park and natural area designation under the municipal plan while proposing a new zone called Special Area Zone 6 for the parking area, which would allow them to build a gravel lot without curbing or internal parking landscaping or other standards required in commercial parking lots. However, since the proposed parking is intended to support industrial rather than recreational use, staff have disagreed with the applicant's interpretation of the municipal plan, and we recommend that the natural area designation be changed if the proposal was to be approved for a permanent change. Following the last public hearing, the applicant has updated their application with new information on community benefits as outlined in their letter dated March 10th, 2025, which is in your kit. If their proposed rezoning with the gravel parking lot is approved, they plan to enhance several park-related features. These park upgrades were part of their original proposal and are shown on the left-hand side of this slide, and that includes everything from the bridge that is required to get their employees across from the park to their site. The new commitments that came forward through this letter include a $250,000 contribution to the next phase of Dominion Park upgrades, a $250,000 contribution to continue extending Harbor Passage, and they are open to exploring the possibility of a trail connection between Fallsview Park and the New Brunswick Museum site, although the details of this third item are yet to be determined. In terms of a little bit of background, the subject property is located on the west side of the city, close to Sims Corner intersection, as shown on the map. The area along Lancaster Avenue has a mix of commercial and residential uses in its vicinity. This is a view of the park entrance from Lancaster Avenue. And then under the municipal plan, the site is designated as park and natural areas, which is intended to allow for conservation and appropriate recreational uses. This designation does not support commercial or industrial uses, and therefore, as indicated previously, any permanent change in the land use would require a redesignation of the land. For context, on the scale of the proposed parking lot, 500 stalls, this slide shows the nearest comparable lot at Lancaster Mall, which contains approximately 432 spaces. I'm going to skip a few slides so I can speak to new points and not repeat some of the information from the previous public hearing. This is the zoning map. The subject property is currently zoned as Park P. The park zone does not permit a standalone parking lot of this scale, and therefore a rezoning is also required. A key concern regarding traffic is that the traffic impact study submitted with the application does not provide a complete picture of the traffic impacts, nor does it address the cumulative effects on adjacent infrastructure, namely Sims Corner. So for this evening, staff's recommendation has more or less remained the same as it was at the last public hearing. As this is a land use matter, the contributions offered by the applicant do not address the issues and impacts at Willistook Park site, and that's the reason why the planning recommendation has remained the same. However, we have brought forward 4 options for council's consideration this evening. The first option, which is our only recommendation, is for common council to deny the application and defeat the bylaw. At the end of my presentation, I will come back to the rationale behind this. The second option is for council to approve the application as proposed by the applicant. This would include approval of the Special Area Zone 6, which will allow the gravel standard parking lot, as well as Section 59 conditions for the various park enhancements that the applicant has proposed. This would permit a permanent parking lot with 506 stalls, and where we will rely entirely on DTI's commitment to the redesign of Sims Corner. Additionally, this option would include a Section 131 agreement with the proponent for community contributions to Dominion Park and Harbor Passage. We have brought forward 2 new options. The third option is for council to consider approving the parking lot temporarily for 5 years with conditions. Under this option, we can maintain the current municipal plan designation because the change would not be permanent. So the designation would remain. It would include approving the proposed special area zone 6 with a 5-year sunset clause, as well as a section 59 for park enhancements. So at the end of 5 years, hopefully that aligns with the construction of the next gen project, the applicant would have to revert the site back to its park status. This would allow for the gravel standard parking lot for 5 years. And additionally, this option would also involve a Section 131 agreement with the proponent for their proportionate share of contribution towards future intersection improvements at Sims Corner if the province of New Brunswick comes back with a funding request to the municipality that exceeds the $3 million allocated by St. John Common Council for the roundabout under the MOVE. This option would also include a 131 agreement for community contributions to Dominion Park and Harbor Passage. If council passes a motion to approve this option, they would need to direct staff to return with an amended bylaw and defer the first and second reading to the next council meeting. The fourth option is for council to consider approving the parking lot permanently with conditions. This would require an amendment to the municipal plan to redesignate the site as stable commercial. In terms of zoning, this option would rezone the site to general commercial CG zone and will require the applicant to develop the parking lot to normal commercial standards. This includes paving, curbs, stormwater management, and internal landscaping. This zoning will allow for a permanent 506-stall parking lot with Section 59 conditions for park enhancements. Additionally, this option would also require a 131 agreement with the proponent for their proportionate share of future intersection improvements at Sims Corner, similar to option 3. If the request from the province is for contribution more than $3 million, then we would require the applicant to pay their proportionate share. Regarding community contributions, under this option, we encourage that council may request greater community benefits than those currently offered for Dominion Park and Harbor Passage. Council could also consider requiring beautification of the mill property along the boundary of Bridge Road. And these improvements could include a landscape berm, tree boulevards, and a wide sidewalk. This option would help mitigate the land use and visual impacts of the industrial site and the intensification that is likely to occur in the near future, and would enhance the overall aesthetic, environment, and improve pedestrian connectivity along IPP property. Similar to option 3, if council passes a motion to approve this option, they would need to direct staff to return with an amended bylaw and defer the first and second reading to the next council meeting. I want to explain why staff's recommendation remains unchanged, and I have made these points at the previous public hearing, but for maybe new members who are in the audience, this is important. When considering the rezoning of Holistic Park, we focus on land use suitability, development impacts, and economic benefits. Regarding land use, the main question is whether a commercial parking lot is appropriate for Holistic Park. Does it align with the city's long-term land use plans and community needs? That's the main question. Regarding development impacts, what are the impacts of this proposal on nearby infrastructure and the community? And we have raised some concerns about traffic and transportation-related impacts at Sims Corner. What mitigation measures and contributions does the application offer to address these impacts? And finally, the third question is, how does rezoning Holistic Park into a parking lot support economic development and council priorities such as job creation, increasing the tax base, and generating other economic opportunities? So based on our evaluation of the proposal against the policy framework, staff are recommending council deny the application and defeat the proposed bylaw for the following reasons. The proposed parking lot is an incompatible land use that is inconsistent with the park and natural areas designation of the municipal plan. The incomplete traffic impact study does not address cumulative impacts to the adjacent infrastructure. The application, the rezoning of Holistic Park to a gravel parking lot does not represent sufficient benefits, nor addresses city's priorities such as increased tax base, housing, or long-term job creation. Lastly, mill site can accommodate a parking structure which can offer a safer, efficient, and environmentally responsible on-site solution to their parking needs while limiting impact to the adjacent community. So once again, staff's recommendation to Common Council is to deny the application. The application has met the necessary notification requirements. Letters were mailed out to adjacent property owners within 100 meters of the subject site on January 7th, 2025. The public notice was posted on the city's website on January 20th, 2025, and then updated again on March 13th, 2025 for tonight's public hearing. As of the publication of the agenda, the city had received a total of 79 letters and 1 petition. With that, I will conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Pankaj. There's time for questions for Pankaj, is not now, correct? No. Okay. All right, so before I open the public hearing, I have something here that I need to read just so that we are all clear on how this is going to work tonight. On February 10th, 2025, Council held a public hearing for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 221, 251, and 271 Lancaster Avenue. In this application, the applicant seeks approval for the development of a parking lot on the Woolastook Park site to serve the next-gen project expansion. Because of meeting time restrictions in the city's procedural bylaw and council voting down a motion to suspend the application of the procedural bylaw to allow the meeting to continue past 11 p.m., council adjourned the public hearing because it was not completed before 11 p.m. The clerk scheduled the continuation of the public hearing for February 24th, 2025. So 2 weeks later, the public hearing was in suspension. We reopened it. On that date, the public hearing concluded with council resolving to refer the application to the CAO to allow for further discussion with the proponent and that the vote on the public hearing be delayed to a future date. So, to allow for further discussion with the proponent, we did that. Following the conclusion of the public hearing, the applicant submitted a revised application in our kits tonight. The revised application is the same as the original application, except for the addition of public benefits, which include a $250,000 contribution to the next phase of upgrades at Dominion Park, and a $250,000 contribution of the continued extension of Harbor Passage. Given the revised application and the requirements of procedural fairness, the city scheduled this evening's meeting for a public hearing to consider objections to the revised application. I note that council has heard the applicant and some members of the public on the original application date of February the 10th and again on February 24th public hearing. The information shared at the previous public hearing does not need to be repeated this evening. We've heard those comments, we've got those. I'll say that again to ensure that everyone is clear that the information that was shared on February 10th and February 25th does not need to be repeated this evening. This evening, when I open the public hearing, I will first ask the applicant to speak with the revisions of the application. So Andrew Carson will come down to do that. Then I will invite members of the public who object to the application to come forward. So, and let's go. Following this, I'll ask members of the public who are in favor of the application to come forward, so the usual routine. I will then close the public hearing, and I ask that those members of the public who have already voiced their objection or support for the original component of the application be mindful that council's heard and will consider their comments from the February 10th and 24th public hearings. Essentially, we're looking for comments on this additional component. Essentially, for the applicant and for those members of the public who have already spoken to the original application, we ask that you focus your comments on the revisions to the application, the public benefit piece. For those members of the public who have not yet spoken to the application, council welcomes their views on the whole application. However, we ask everyone to kindly not repeat things that have been covered by previous speakers. It's okay for them to come forward and say that you agree with what's been said and that you just want your name on the record. And I will say for everyone here and in the public that the kit, this one item tonight, is 643 pages. It's all been read by all of my team. So a lot of what has been said we've already read, but we're happy to have people come down. So now I'll call Andy Carson to come down. Where is Andy? Oh, there he is. Okay. And you can present the addition. Any questions for him? Questions for him?
How are you? I have, this is your old one, and this is the new one. Would you like to go off the new one?
The new one, I can't do that,
Yeah, of course. Let's do that. And just
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Worship and Council. Once again, my name is Andy Carson. I work in government relations and public policy at JD Irving, and it's nice to see you again. We spent a lot of time on this file together, as you acknowledge, Your Worship, and happy to provide an update on the relevant new additions to the application and answer, of course, any questions that you have. I do plan very briefly to touch on elements of, just to kind of reframe the discussion very, very efficiently and very, very briefly, just to sort of reframe why we're here today and the importance of this project, the justification for the parking project, but I will be very, very efficient in doing so. I just want to remind that the broader context around IPP and why the NextGen project is important. Again, I mentioned this the last time, and I'll mention it again very briefly. The Irving Pulp and Paper Mill on the west side seems very large, but is actually on a global scale in the bottom quartile on a capacity basis. We're taking active steps as an organization as we speak. In fact, construction has started in the past number of weeks on the NextGen project, early site preparation, to take that site to the top quartile. And that is important to sustain and protect the employment at that mill and to maintain its competitiveness in a very competitive global market for the next 50 years. It's a very important reason for this project. It's what's driving all of the work that we're doing right now. This was the site before we started work. Everybody's familiar with that. But as we moved into site preparation work in the past few weeks, we've lost 250, specifically 248 spots, which is the site of the large recovery boiler, which will make up kind of the centerpiece of the NextGen project. And that has happened already. So again, this is, from our perspective, quite urgent and quite important. And from an application perspective, this is the vision that we're trying to bring to life with this rezoning application, which is using approximately 4 acres of land within Woolastook Park, converting it to parking, investing in and enhancing the balance of Woolastook Park, installing a bridge, and again, enhancing other aspects of the park, as well as following through on the contributions that we've committed to in our application, again, to bring this vision of the site to life. There's a history to the site again, and I won't spend too much time on this because we have touched on it, but it is important. The Woolastook Park site was previously the site of Centricare. It was that in that state for about 150 years. JD Irving acquired that site in 1998 under an agreement with the province to acquire the site in its current state, to demolish Centricare completely, to remediate the site to a green space standard, and then to hold the site until we had a use for it in the future. And we've fulfilled that side of the agreement for about 27 years now, and made the site in the process a park that is publicly accessible to a private park that is publicly accessible. And we're happy to do that as part of the 600 plus acres that we make available as high quality parks on the west side of the city. But again, we've lived to this agreement for about 27 years, and we are at a point now where we've identified an important economic use for the site to support the neighboring operations at Irving Pulp and Paper, the NextGen project, and its ongoing maintenance and other activities going forward. We have talked about the enhancements that we brought into the application. When we actually originally filed this application, and this was back in August of 2024, many of these elements actually didn't exist. We've actually updated this proposal on 2 different occasions, just to clarify that point. We held an open house in October on the west side where we took a great amount of feedback from the community. So many of the enhancements that are outlined here didn't exist prior to that open house. So things like the 1 kilometer walking and running trail around the park, that was direct feedback from the St. John Track and Field Association because they run an annual event there. We thought that was a great idea. We're in the business of developing and maintaining trails. That was an easy addition. You know, we heard feedback from the community around the visual effect of the parking lot. We committed to installing additional trees along Lancaster Avenue and installing an interior sort of landscape berm to, again, soften the impact visually of the parking lot within the park and driving by the park. We've committed to, of course, other features, including a new sidewalk along Bridge Road, a covered bus stop, new staircases to allow easier and more efficient ingress and egress from the park, and very importantly, a pedestrian bridge across Bridge Road, which we understand, or you understand, is being built to facilitate construction workers going from the parking lot to the site, but which we will not be removing upon the completion of NextGen. That will become, in some sense, a privately owned but public asset going forward, where the community can use it along with workers at our site. And when NextGen is over with, and we're only into a mode of using this parking lot for large maintenance projects, it will become principally a public asset from that point of view. And we wanted to highlight that. Just to highlight a couple of updated views of the amenities that we've committed to. Again, this is a view that shows the new sidewalk and bus stop along Bridge Road, a new staircase into the park, and the trail that would run back to the parking lot itself, along with the start of the 1 kilometer walking and running trail around the park. We wanted to highlight the bridge here for just a moment and not kind of take a different view at nighttime because it pops
Mr.
out a little
Carson,
more clearly.
can I just interrupt you for 1 second? I have my stop clock stopped.
Okay,
You got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes, okay.
I
I'll
need
move
to
right
be
along.
ruthless
Yep,
tonight.
Yep, move right along. So just wanted to highlight, we have introduced safety barriers on the bridge based on some of the feedback from the open house. They're actually curved safety barriers, which we actually think is a bit more of an architecturally interesting way of achieving that safety effect. But we've introduced more lighting along the pathway system to kind of make the area more kind of inviting and welcoming as dusk and nighttime appears. And this is just a different view of the walking and running trail, again, in a daytime view. We also think, again, before kind of coming to our conclusion here, I think there's an overall vision here that's actually very important to highlight. The combination of what we're intending to do at this site, plus what you're intending to do with your Cove Harbor Passage Extension project, we think it opens up significant opportunities from a recreation perspective here in the city. Suddenly, Woollistook Park in this area can become a bit of a central recreation hub, allowing for Harbor Passage recreation users or other users to come from uptown, across Reversing Falls Bridge, into Woollistook Park, to make their way more deeply into the west side toward the Carleton Community Center, and to use that bridge to get over the safety concern of Bridge Road and access Main Street West, Manawaganish Road, and so on. It really turns this area into a central recreation hub, which we think is very exciting, very important, and something that we're very happy to contribute to. We have articulated new commitments as part of our updated letter. As mentioned, a $250,000 commitment to Dominion Park, a similar commitment to Harbor Passage and extending it more deeply into the west side, and an openness based on property that we own around the New Brunswick Museum site to begin discussions with the city around a connecting trail to connect through to Fallsview. Again, another extension or leg of Harbor Passage in the future. And this is being framed from our point of view as compensation for the loss of the approximately 3.9 to 4 acres associated with the change of use of that land at Woollistook Park. There is importantly Sims Corner, which has come up a number of times. At the end of the last public hearing, I believe it was Councillor Norton sort of appealed to us and to the broader community, those listening, to make progress on Sims Corner. And I think it's important to acknowledge that over the course of the past 4 to 5 weeks, there has been an important new commitment that has come forward from DTI associated with the steering committee that has been established to steward this project forward, the contract that has been struck with EXP to be the main engineer behind driving this work from a design perspective, and a financial commitment, which we thought was noteworthy and compelling, but also framing this in the context of the importance of accelerating work on this national trade corridor that Sims Corner is part of, in relation to trade diversification and addressing the broader trade war risk that we're all kind of responding to right now. Just by way of wrapping up here, and again, recognizing the time and how much time we've spent on this together, it's our appeal to you, your worship and council tonight to come to a vote. We need a decision on this matter. We have been at this for quite some time. Our first staff meeting was back in July of 2024. We submitted our first application in August of 2024. We've been through now over 8 hours of public hearings, which is significant. And the ongoing uncertainty from the standpoint of us stewarding our major project next door is impacting how we think about parking, logistics, and other considerations. And we need to manage those risks down to something we understand very, very efficiently. To provide our perspective on the options, I mean, certainly there's a variety of options that have been articulated by staff, and we understand that. From our point of view, the main option here is option 2. It is voting on the application that we've brought forward, that we've updated on a couple of different occasions in December and then again in March, based on feedback from the community and feedback from the open house. Another option is to vote to deny. We see those as the 2 options that are up for consideration tonight because we need clarity moving forward. Option 3, we don't see as a viable option. We've attempted to be clear through this process that we need this parking lot on a permanent basis going forward. While there's an important need around NextGen, there is an ongoing need going forward based on changes within the mill site. It's a congested site. The industrial assets at the site are growing. We're losing parking. There is a justified need for this parking lot going forward that is important and a key driver of this project. So we're also would be investing, north of $6 million to bring all of this together from an infrastructure perspective. we can't just roll that up in 5 years. It's a significant investment in a parking lot, and we'd want that investment to enable parking solutions well into the future. Importantly, there's some of the conditions that are opposed. Linked to option 3 are conditions that we aren't comfortable agreeing to. We've been clear about that through this process as well, so that is another reason why we don't think option 3 can work. And option 4, similarly, we don't see as workable at this point in time. We've worked very hard, again, from a community consultation perspective, and we've worked with staff on enhancements to the application. We've brought forward what we think are strong community benefits from the standpoint of enhancing the park, contributions to West Side recreation priorities that were shared with us by staff over the course of the last number of weeks. From our point of view, we would see negotiations as being complete. We think we've put together a generous package in relation to the loss of approximately 4 acres in the site, and are excited to bring, again, the overall recreation vision that we've shared to life, where Willistook Park, the work that you're doing can tie together, I think, in a very compelling way. And again, from a broader condition perspective, there's additional conditions that have been suggested in relation to option 4 that, again, are conditions that I think we've kind of been clear through the process where we're uncomfortable accepting at this point in time. So from our point of view, again, in the context of trying to seek clarity, trying to seek a vote, for us it is a question of option 2 as the application that we brought forward, trying to get clarity on that. So that is our appeal tonight, is to come to a vote, to get the clarity we require to move forward, given the amount of time that has passed since we started this process, the uncertainty that we're all grappling with quite actively as a result of changes in global markets, changes in supply chains that are impacting projects right across Canada. That is our appeal tonight, and with that, happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Okay, team, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Carson? We'll have a lineup here. I'll ask you to keep your questions brief with the preamble so that we can get right to them. Councillor Stewart, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Andy, just first question is curiosity.
Okay.
Monday night, 7 o'clock, there's 12 tractor trailers all lined up, coming up from Faribault Boulevard, in front of Tim Hortons there, all going into the mill.
Okay.
What was in those? Is that all chips?
Specifically at 7 p.m. on Monday night, I'm not sure.
Would that be random freight?
I'm looking around the room to those who might know better, and they don't know. We certainly, Councillor, can endeavor to find out and answer the question.
I guess it leads to my next point, but there's 12 tractor trailers all lined up there, which definitely affects the traffic flow of that intersection. That's all going into your guys' space.
Okay.
Next one, I'm just curious again, why, if there's that much truck traffic, and I sat behind 2 trains myself this week, on Monday and Tuesday, it's clear to me that a big beneficiary of that traffic area, that circle, is JDI and the logistics park and
Okay.
just in general. So why are you guys so adamant that you don't want to put any money into making that corner more efficient? $3.9 million for the rest of it. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's going to look beautiful. I know you guys will do an awesome job with this. But why, again, wouldn't you put money into that to make that more efficient?
I think certainly it's a great question, Councillor Stewart, and from the standpoint of rail, I think you're referring to.
Yeah.
I mean, we provide a service. We provide a service across Sims Corner to all of the different shippers who are coming in and out of Port St. John, and I think we're all very excited by the strong growth that we've all witnessed visually and otherwise at Port St. John. We're happy to provide that service. I think from our point of view, we're not in the business of developing and owning public infrastructure. But there is a very important role. So again, it sounds like I'm deflecting here. But there is an incredibly important role that we have played and that we can play going forward in relation to Sims Corner. And that is helping to secure the necessary funding from a federal perspective, or provincial perspective as well for that matter, but certainly from a federal perspective to make that project go. This is, and I mentioned this briefly in my sort of opening remarks, Sims Corner is a intersection in St. John. But looked at through a different lens, it is part of a national trade corridor. It is an infrastructure project of national significance. We all deal with it, again, from a local perspective and view it through that lens. But viewed from a trade perspective, it is something very, very significant. We hear in the context of the federal election that we're in, we're seeing increasing messages from, I think, all parties about the importance of having significant infrastructure programming in place coming out of the election to support and stimulate the economy, to drive trade diversification, and to address concerns such as like local concerns around traffic. And we think working collectively as a community, city, JDI, port, DTI, RDC, et cetera, on putting together the most compelling possible package to pitch to policymakers and decision makers in Ottawa is an incredibly helpful role that we can play as JDI. And I would say, Councillor, we're already doing that. Again, that there was a challenge to us at the end of the last public hearing. We need progress on Sims Corner. There has been progress in Sims Corner in the past 4 to 5 weeks just since that last public hearing. That's work that we can do, and that's work that we want to continue doing with you. And that is a role where our experience, our relationships, and I think our insights as an organization could add incredible value. We have a facility to run. It's a capital-intensive facility. We have large growth plans there. We have large growth plans across our business. Those are better places for us to focus our efforts, but we can work together to secure the kinds of funding necessary to unlock Sims Corner once and for all, to address not the concerns of the past 10 years, but to make it address the concerns of the next 50 years going forward. That's the value proposition that I think we bring to Sims Corner, and we'd very much like to play going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, over to you.
Yeah, Andy, I'll talk about the parking lot. Like, it says, and it doesn't say it on our sheet here, but it says, the use of the parking lot be limited to 5 years, which you don't like that. At the end of the time period, council may take steps, may. Council also might continue on the day to allow it to be a permanent parking lot for, like you say, the changes to go check what was done earlier. And maybe they'll use it to hopefully build an overpass someday. But nowhere does it say for sure that we're going to say it's 5 years, it's done. It says the word may. And like, hopefully I ain't here in 5 years, right? Like, you know what I mean? But that's exactly what it says. And I know why you're saying you need it for the 5 years to build, and then a couple years later, you want it, no doubt, to have them come in and see whether the stuff you built and what you bought is actually working. But I also say that it doesn't say that it's done with after 5 years. It says it, then it says council may. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden, over to you.
Andy, I've been driving to West Side most of my life. Don't live over there now, but I still drive through Sims Corner every day, and I experience what Councillor Stewart experiences every day. The trains are longer. There's more of them, which is good news for the port. But we don't seem to be, as a city, to be the beneficiary of that. When I talk to people in West St. John, the level of frustration is extremely high. And part of it is with DTI, because we're now in our 7th, going into our 8th year of the Harbor Bridge. And we hear it all the time, even though we don't control it, it's DTI. But one thing I hear is the fear that now we have to rely on DTI for the overpass. And we know we have to build an overpass. With the tariffs now, we have to make more products. We're going to have more markets. St. John is going to become even more important. We saw we're in the most vulnerable city. In some ways, that's good news if we diversify our economy and our markets. But when you said that you're on side with building the overpass, which wasn't said before, but you are now, I think that's good news. I spoke to the Premier yesterday in Fredericton. She told me we're absolutely on side with getting that overpass. And I said, it can't be a Harbor Bridge deal where we wait 8 years. It's got to be done quickly. And when it's built, it's got to be done 24 hours a day, because the people in Milford, Randolph, Dever Road, they're just extremely upset about all this. And, you know, I did something last week that I've been doing for 45 years. I delivered foods and clothing to a number of the organizations I've worked with. I've done it all my life. And the poverty in this city is the worst I've ever seen. It's getting worse in this city. I know politically people don't like to talk about that, but it is. Our educational is the lowest. We have the lowest number of university students by far of any city and some towns in Atlantic Canada. So when we talk about cooperation, the last time you mentioned you're going to cooperate with us on getting the industrial tax. That's 66 years. Last year it was $7 million. It's now hundreds of millions of dollars. The only city in the country. And we need your help there. But when we talk about cooperation, and I'm hoping that's what we'll do here, I really think that you've got to help us with poverty and education. There's no reason that Moncton and Fredericton have 10,000 university students and we have 2,300, except the tax dollars aren't being spent in St. John. We know we're not getting the industrial tax, but we need you guys on side. We need the port on side. We need DP World, CP, KC. We need everybody on side to solve these social issues, or you're not going to have a labor force in the future. We
Councillor
can't.
Ogden, you're at your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Our guest gets 10, but you get 3. That's the way it works. Next councillor is Councillor Red 1.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions for you, Mr. Carson. Thank you. First, I'm just wondering, I know that it would displace your staff if you were to do it right now, but is there any other reason that you're actually against building a parking garage right on your property over in the mill side of the street?
One of the principal reasons is limited real estate. Again, there's a displacement of the about 350 spots where a parking garage would go, combined with the 250 spots that we've just lost with the beginning of site preparations for Project NextGen. And we'd be in a position where parking at site would be incredibly limited. The problem would be exacerbated. It would be doubled and tripled. Like it'd be very, very significant. We wouldn't be able to operate safely and reliably. So that represents just a basic, significant challenge. The site seems very large, but from a real estate perspective, it's actually very limited, and it's getting smaller as a consequence of the growth of the mill associated with the large recovery boiler that will be installed as part of Project NextGen.
I just kind of think from a business perspective for your staff, it would actually be more convenient, right? Like they could park right there, be very close to the site, on the site, basically. Then it leads to my next question is, like, I'm really kind of thinking, like, if this got denied, what are you going to do? Like, how will you manage your project?
We've been clear, I think, from day one that this is our preferred option. We've looked at a variety of different options from a people perspective, and we put our people first. We think about the lived experiences of the people who are helping us build this facility, the people who are helping us maintain Irving Pulp and Paper. We think about them arriving, getting to work quickly, safely, reliably, being able to go home, being able to respond to emergencies in their personal life, being able to do that with a relatively short walk. And it's not short. I mean, it's still a little bit of a distance, but a relatively short walk across the pedestrian bridge into Williston Park, into a vehicle, and then home, or to respond to something that may have come up in life. We think that's a better overall experience. It makes our project more attractive in terms of how we compete for labor than some of the alternatives that we considered. Again, we looked at a parking garage. We just can't make it work from a timing perspective or a real estate perspective. We looked at busing to a number of different satellite locations, which from the perspective of the feedback we've received from our partners in the building trades is by far the least preferred option because of the time and inconvenience and stress I think it adds to, again, the lived experience of those workers. So again, when we looked at all of those options, we continue to come back to this site, to this property, figuring out a way of, again, developing it in the least impactful way, again, about 3.9 acres, thinking about enhancements we can make to the balance of the park as a balance, but then thinking about broader contributions we can make to the community to, again, recognize that, yes, it is a loss of some green space, and we recognize that. We own and operate a number of parks around the west side. We're pro-park. But what can we do to, again, compensate for that? And that's the structure of the overall application that we've updated and that we're discussing here before council.
No, I appreciate that, Mayor. I know I'm done on my time, but I appreciate you thinking about your people, and I think tonight we have to think about all of our people and council. That includes JDI. That includes all residents too. So thank you.
Deputy, over to you next.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be very short. What year did you start planning NextGen?
What year?
Planning started next year.
Planning this for 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
2 years ago.
So 2015 you started planning?
We've been in 10-year plans.
Okay. Okay, and you said that the big barrier to putting up a parking garage is you'd have to bus people in because they couldn't park there, correct?
That is a barrier, yep.
Yeah. But you did say that you were only using 30% of the park to park 500 cars there for 5 years while you build next gen, correct?
And again, requiring it beyond that, but yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So why couldn't you park the people that are there now in the parking lot at Willistook Park, build your parking structure, and then move them over at the end of that?
There's a surge of trades coming. We're not at a steady state, Deputy Mayor. As we move into this project, we're just at the earliest stages. We have excavators doing site preparation work. From a labor perspective, the number's quite small. Okay. But as we move into 2026, as we move into 2027, the number of skilled trades workers at site is going to expand considerably. And that's when the pinch is really, really going to come. During that peak in 26, 27, 28, it's not, while we've started work on the site to prepare the site for construction, we are nowhere close to the maximum number of tradespeople we're going to need to build the project. So we're
You're
not
going to need a couple of years to get to that height. That's what you're telling me, right?
we're starting to build up to it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just a yes or no. I don't need a long
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
If you had the okay to do 5 years for 500 parking places, right, while you did the next gen, why couldn't you use 200 or 300 of them for the first year or two while you built your parking garage and then keep the others for when you get to your peak?
On a site balance basis, again, the math doesn't work, and I appreciate the creativity, but again, we're trying to resolve this for 500 tradespeople. We have the existing mill workers, the 300 workers, we have workers at the tissue mill, and as we lose sites for construction, the balance doesn't work.
It's a no.
It's a no,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you. Counselor Killen, over to you next.
Thank you, Your Worship. So why does it need to be permanent then if you only need to have folks parking there for the surge? If it's going to go, and I think I've also read that the staffing levels are going to return to what they are currently, if not less.
It's in anticipation of maintenance shuts in the future. So again, a very significant surge during construction. Again, 500
Yeah.
spots through this phase that we're just at the very start of starting to peak up to. Actually, we're nowhere close to peak. That will be in the years ahead. But post next gen, on a frequent basis, call it a couple of times a year, we'll be into a cycle where we need to bring hundreds of people in for hopefully relatively short periods of time. But during those peaks, there will be a need for significant additional parking. And from our point of view, if we've spent the $6 to $7 million putting this bridge in, putting the parking lot, enhancing the park, putting lighting in to accommodate the next gen construction surge, we think this is the most efficient possible solution for managing those peaks going forward. We've also indicated that is a perspective from, for JDI's needs. But again, coming back to this notion of Sims Corner, we are always looking at maps and thinking about how to optimize assets in the area. If we think about the next logical mega project that could take place in that neck of the woods, that part of the west side, it is in all likelihood the Sims Corner investment, which will be itself a significant investment, which will be itself an investment that will require a lot of people, a lot of skilled trades. And we've throughout the process with DTI, with city staff, and with other stakeholders, we've signaled, assuming timing works, which, we think we have to be able to work that out. Assuming timing works, we've always signaled an openness to this parking lot being leverageable for the purpose of helping the Sims Corner project be successful. Because if this doesn't exist, it's the next parking challenge that we're all going to face.
So ostensibly, that would be something you'd rent to DTI or something down the road because it would be a space for them to.
Make available. It could be laid down for some equipment.
But it's another revenue generator in the end potentially.
Not sure if it would be like accretive from a revenue perspective. We see it as just good planning, working with.
But it's not of the good of your heart that you're going to offer them the space to park their stuff while Sims is developed.
I don't think that we would view it as a significant revenue generator. We're not in the.
I'm not saying it would be
parking lot business.
significant. I think it's that it will be there for you in the future as a place that will be a way to make money off the government.
We think it just makes good sense.
Okay,
We think it makes really good sense, and it's part of being a responsible industrial neighbor to our partners.
Counselor Radwan, one quick question.
Just a quick one. Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to clarify, what is the longest time that you usually have a shutdown?
4 weeks, month? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a month at the most.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for questions from my team. I have a couple of quick ones. What's the finish date for next gen?
Be in 2029.
2029. What's the assessed value of Willistook Park?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, Your Worship, but I
It's
can.
800,000.
Okay.
You bought it for $1 million 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And in my kit, it says the proposed parking lot at Willistook Park was not included in the JDI's environmental impact assessment for next gen. Curious as to why.
We were working on the project itself. As we worked on the project, we identified that there is a need for a parking solution, separate from the assets, the equipment, the design, the facilities associated with the next gen project proper. And when that need became readily apparent, we began working on this application in earnest with staff and with other stakeholders.
Did you get the approval?
Excuse me?
Did you get your EIA?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we
sounds
received
good.
that last year.
Thank you. All right, that's it. Okay,
Person?
that's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Carson, for presenting the project. So I'm gonna now open the public hearing. I'm gonna ask for anyone who would like to speak against the proposal to come forward. Give us your name and your address.
My name is David Ryan. I live at Dominion Park. I always like to go first because I think you all know by now I have a very early bedtime. Is there a presentation that's up here? I'm not sure how to put it up. Yeah, I sent it in. It's it there.
This one
Perfect.
here, you
Yeah,
got it.
okay, thank you.
Of course, let me just do that for you, and back and forth is this one, okay?
This way? Okay, thank you. So it's right here.
So what we're looking for is, your
I
response.
understood
Got that?
exactly what
Okay.
you said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And before I begin, I just want to state that it is possible to object to something without objecting to an overall. I have ultimate respect for JDI, I have ultimate respect for Irving Pulp and Paper, ultimate respect for the Irving family. Thank you for being here, Mr. Irving. I'm old enough to have met your father and your grandfather, and I understand that the lessons you've taught us as citizens of St. John and the investments you put into the city, both through your businesses and as an overall community, and I want to thank you for that. I just have an issue with this project, this particular parking. As my very brief objection is going to be centered on the letter which was presented because that is the only new information. The only thing and the most disappointing part of that letter is the part that I object to the most that was not addressed is the fact that from Lancaster Avenue coming into Sims Corner, if you're to go straight to Main Street West, is still at a level of service F, which is fail. There's words on the screen that I submitted. It's a dangerous intersection. Since I was here the last time, I did have a conversation with a very lovely lady who was going through that intersection coming from Bridge Street to turn left up onto Lancaster. She was cut off and resulted in close to $10,000 in cost to her to have her dog fixed because of that. It happens daily. This is a dangerous intersection. So what I want to talk about is safety, community, and quality of life. A lot of words in the letter. We've been told in our community, mostly by engineers, things were going to be great. There's only going to be a certain number of trucks that are going to come into the area. We know today, because of reports that city staff have done, the number of trucks that were presented is 3 times what it was, and our roads are not built to handle 56-foot long transport trucks. They can't make the corners. Just trying to make the corners backs up the traffic. We were told through environmental assessment that the new wastewater treatment plant would have no odor, would have no light pollution. I'm out walking at 5 o'clock in the morning, and when the wind's blowing the right way, you're walking down Milford Road now, it's like walking through dirty socks, the smell that's there. So 24 hours a day, we have trains loading and unloading. I understand the economic benefits. I understand where all that is, but we were told there's going to be sound barriers put up, and we lie awake now at 3 o'clock in the morning and listen to the bang, bang, bangs. Actually, it was going on just before I left here today. Again, the words tariffs were in the letters. I kind of chuckled on that because tariffs are a cost of goods sold. That's what they are. JDI, and I think it's amazing that you're a privately held company, not publicly traded. We have no way of knowing what the cost of goods sold are, especially the goods that are sold into the U.S. So it's a it's a guess. I did do a little quick investigation, and again, that's in the presentation I submitted. I do note, I think there's some talk here right now that there was wording of for clarity, that this parking lot will be permanent during the construction phase and going forward to accommodate the labor requirements. So I was wondering about the parking side of it, and then through some communications back and forth, I came to find out that this special zone 6 actually doesn't exist at this time, and you would have to, as a council, you're going to have to approve it after the fact if that's where you want to go. And it's, I guess, thank you for the learning process of learning that people can just say, we'd like to have our own zoning, and this is how it works. It's kind of neat, and I think more citizens need to know that. The other thing that I do want to state is there's a $3.9 million figure attached to the work that's going to be done at Willistook Park and the overpass. There's already money budgeted to have this parking spot located somewhere else within the footprint. Also, words. In the February 10th package, there was discussion of Irving purchasing the property from the province subject to a condition. And on the March 10th letter, the words "on the condition" have replaced "subject to the condition." And, you know, there's legalities involved in that. Subject to is found in contracts and policies, where "on the condition" is used in spoken or written requests. Either way, the city of St. John is not involved in the purchase and sale agreement between the province of New Brunswick and JDI. My question, and it's a question I'm surprised nobody's asked, is why was this owned park in the first place? If there was an agreement in place to say that we're going to make it, you know, utilize it for economic benefit, like somebody in JDI should be mad at somebody from JDI came here and asked for it to be zoned park. Or if it was just zoned park somehow, then JDI should have objected. Because I could have probably got back about 10 hours of my life and not have to be here. If it wasn't zone park, we all wouldn't be here today. Next slide. I haven't moved forward, sorry. Here's my next slide. This is the footprint, excluding the Williston Park, of what we're talking about with NextGen. NextGen goes right down into the wood chip facility, into where they're blasting now. And I really do find the words that we can't find a place to park within this footprint to be hard to swallow. I don't know whether this is a parking problem or whether it's a walking problem or what's a moving people problem, but I know the safety that's involved at Sims Corner should have perhaps Irving Pulp and Paper looking, saying, where else could we move this? Their safety that's going to be including their own employees and their own construction workers. Next, council priorities. You've stated as your priorities, you want a 3% residential tax base. You want to connect neighborhoods with safe, accessible, integrated transportation options. And you've recently come forward as Sims Corner. I'll go backwards. If this pedestrian overpass goes in, it could potentially limit the redevelopment of Sims Corner, or somebody's going to have to buy it and pick it up and move it. I'm old enough to say, you know, maybe the best way, like we talk about an overpass, it could be a land swap, it could be an expropriation of part of the park, and having to give JDI and Irving Pulp and Paper a little bit more land closer to their own property, which to me might make sense. But there's a certain factor there that needs to come into play, and I know you wanted DTI to be here, but they declined to be here, so you can't ask them that question.
Mr. Ryan, can I get you to wrap it up there for us? Only because we've been through all of this. What I'm looking for is a little bit of a reaction to the differential in the package, which is the 500,000.
I get that, but I also note that the previous speaker talked about a lot of stuff we've already talked about as well. So I'm almost done.
Yeah,
I'm almost done.
He was a presenter, though.
Okay, I thought I was presenting my objection.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I'll go to the numbers, and this is what it really comes down to. Your 3% residential growth, I was able to identify 4 properties on Milford Road that were purchased for the expansion of this land print. There was only 2 that I could get the purchase price on. So 317 Milford Road and 453 Milford Road were each purchased for $350,000. Both significantly over the assessed value. And the tax reduction on those two alone amounts to $5,500 to date. I found tax reductions on 461 Milford Road and 397 Milford Road. So on 4 properties, I've identified tax loss to the city of $8,588. So that averages out on 4 to a little over $2,100. And I think there was 8 properties torn down on Milford Road for the expansion of the footprint. So that is roughly $17,000 plus change just on Milford Road that's lost to the city, which goes directly against your 3% tax growth. I also wonder whether the purchase price has overly inflated some of the properties on Milford Road, and they will move forward to potentially assess that and say, where are we at now? So $500,000 is a lot of money. When I first read it, I said, do we try and get the community together and come up with 500,001 and try and outbid? That's not something we're doing, and I know it's ridiculous. But I go back to, in my mind, what is our community worth? Our community involves people who work at Irving Pulp and Paper, work for JDI, have been there for a long time. And the offer on the table is 71% of what they paid just for 2 properties on Milford Road to tear them down. So $700,000 to buy 2 properties, $500,000 for our community to have increased safety, or reduced safety at Simmons Corner, and an increased footprint of industrial. To me, it sucks. To be quite honest, it's sad. I'll also, and this is my last slide, no, second last slide, I should say, relate to my own property. I do live at Dominion Park, and I want to thank JDI for, sorry, I keep forgetting to do this. I want to thank JDI for the investment they've already made in Dominion Park, and Dominion Park looks beautiful.
Okay, we're at 10 minutes.
Okay.
I got to wrap you up.
I was able to reduce my assessment twice over the last 10 years because of the work that's being done across from us. And last point, you set precedents when you declined the rezoning at Starburst Lane, excuse me, based on traffic concerns of citizens. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Nope, either we're out of time for you for questions.
I was asking if there was any questions. Sorry.
Yeah, we're out of time for the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was, okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. I'll take the next speaker who would like to speak against the application. I'll get you to give us your name and your address if you don't mind, just for the record.
Hi there, Mayor and Council. Brian Wilson, Lower West. I'll keep it pretty short. Just agreeing with staff recommendation to deny the application. And I won't repeat anything else about that. I just wanted to make a comment about parks in general. They're not just a pretty place where we can hang out or take our dog to poop. They actually serve a pretty important function. They serve as a filter from heat to provide shade. They serve as a filter for stormwater and a filter against pollution. In the 2022 New Brunswick Air Quality Monitoring Results Report, it states, if I get my phone to rotate it. So why is that feature so important? Sorry, this microphone seems really loud. So why is filtering pollution so important for a park? From the New Brunswick 2022 Air Quality Report, they state, the city of St. John is a major industrial center for the province. It hosts a variety of industrial emitters, including the Irving Oil Limited refinery, the Irving Pulp and Paper Limited mill, and the Irving Paper Limited mill. The city also experiences air quality impacts from ship traffic at its active industrial port. Together, these sources emit fine particulates, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, reduced sulfur compounds, and volatile organic compounds. So my point here is that it isn't just a pretty green space that people want to look at. And yes, it is. It does act as that buffer between the industrial zone. But there are actual things going on, and our parks serve as a filter to help keep us healthy and safe. And thanks to the work done by ACAP St. John, we could even put a dollar figure to that value. And a good example is their tree inventory report that actually puts a dollar value on the work that nature does for us without us having to do anything for nature. That's all. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Wilson tonight? I don't see any questions. So what I'm looking for is, like I said, at the, oh, Councillor Radwan, go ahead.
Just quickly, Brian, just wondering, who have, sorry, my light, okay. Do you have any thoughts on the additional 250,000 for Dominion Park, which that's to put into our parks, and 250,000 towards Harbor Passage, this addition that's been offered?
So I recently was looking up some research, and TD Bank donated 500,000 to Harbor Passage. This is an organization that doesn't pollute the city, doesn't create traffic impact, and it isn't stealing property. Sorry, not stealing, that's the wrong word. It isn't removing a park from the ecosystem. So by that standard right there, the dollar figure should be significantly more. But we're also talking about, like, if you buy a home next to a park and there's nothing in any plan that says that park could go at any time, how are you supposed to plan for that?
True.
If no one gives you a heads up and says, hey, this park is suddenly going to become something else, then maybe we should be wary about all these private parks, that at any time they could be developed.
Yep, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. That's what we're looking for is, I guess, we're asking both sides of this argument to speak on the 500,000 that's being added to the application tonight.
Sure.
So appreciate it.
And my point was really just to say that there's also, hasn't really been spoken to the value of the work that nature does for us. Natural asset management will actually create a dollar value. It's based around the work that engineered infrastructure does for the same job, and they apply that to what nature does for us just by being there. Anyways, thanks. Anyone else? No? Yeah, thank you.
Don't see any other lights on. Thank you. Okay, I'll ask if there's anyone else who would like to speak against the application this evening. Welcome. I'll get you to give us your name and your address if you don't mind, just for the record.
Okay. My name is Amanda and I live in the Lower West Side. So I spoke at the public hearing on February 10th in opposition to this motion, and I attended the remainder of the public hearing on February 24th. And I'm here today again to speak in opposition to this motion. And I urge the City Council to reject this proposal outright. I can't believe I'm here at City Council again for the third time this winter to advocate on this issue. And I cannot believe how many hours City Council have had to spend listening and deliberating on this issue. I really feel terrible for all of you, to be honest. And I don't even want to think about the hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of time that city staff have spent preparing materials to educate the public and yourselves about why this proposal should be rejected. We should listen to our city staff when they tell us this proposal doesn't align with the municipal plan. Just this week, the city released its 6 critical priorities for growth on their website. One of these 6 priorities for the near future is improving Sims Corner. Another is ensuring that municipal, provincial, and industrial interests are aligned to create long-term financial stability. Sitting through about 10 hours of public hearings so far, I'm not getting the feeling that our interests with industry are aligned right now. And it's not because of the city, I'll say that. We have an applicant who has repeatedly told us at the last hearing that they're not interested in financially contributing to the improvement of Sims Corner. They're not interested in dealing with the traffic problems that they contribute to. And they're not interested in coming to the table to be part of the solution. They repeatedly told us that over the past 2 evenings of hearings. When City Council very generously, I think, asked the applicant to come back with a more attractive proposal that had improved public benefit, what did the applicant come back to us with? Their offer is a rounding error in their project budget. The applicant claims this is a $1.1 billion project. Their contribution is 0.04% of the overall project budget. Pennies. I can't believe that I'm here for a third time, and the only reason we're all here is a letter that doesn't address any of the concerns of the project, doesn't address the traffic issues, and is the equivalent, really, of offering us a couple of Canadian Tire flower pots. The applicant has had the opportunity to come to council with an improved offer. This isn't an offer. It's an insult. If this proposal is approved, City Council will be actively endorsing the encroachment of industry further into residential areas. This is in direct contravention of all municipal plans. I ask Council, why do we bother creating municipal plans if we just let industry do whatever they want to do anyway? I'm also concerned about the precedent this could set as JDI looks to expand their operations into the future. Today, it's Woollistic Park. Tomorrow, maybe they need Irving Nature Park in Sheldon Point for their new sludge pond or something. I urge Council to think very deeply about if this is the kind of precedent we want to set, and if this is the kind of city we want to be. I urge our city councillors to consider, how do we want others to view our city? Did any of our city councillors, I wonder, see this week's photojournalism piece about St. John in the New York Times? It wasn't pretty. That's how our city is currently viewed on the world stage. And we have the opportunity right here tonight to start to change that trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the presenter? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the proposal this evening. I'll get you to give us your name and your address, please.
So my name is Balázs Lajta, and I live uptown Duke Street. And so I was already here last time. I collected some thoughts based on the improved proposal. So thank you for offering this $500,000. I mean, it's probably more than you would have to pay, but I think it's more of the city's job to handle this situation. So I want to bring the attention of the council to a troubling trend affecting St. John. So a trend we have the opportunity to break by helping GDI find another solution to the problem of attracting employees.
That's better.
It seems to me that success in St. John meant to leave. So escaping the Lower West Side or the South End, buying a house in the suburbs, Milledgeville, Quispam or Rosse, driving to work, to shop, to eat. The city turned into mere scenery for commuters. People passed through it in air-conditioned trucks and SUVs, isolated and fearful. Then head online to complain about homelessness, addiction, and potholes. If we keep letting big corporations shape St. John, it will cease being a city. Industry is slowly taking more and more. St. John is already having a tough time. Beautiful old homes have turned into rundown apartments owned by absentee landlords. Union and Main Street should be thriving with storefronts, but instead they've become little more than transit corridors where businesses struggle to find a foothold. But we have started to turn a corner. In every thriving city, the downtown core is the place to be. People want to live close to stores, jobs, and community. Thanks to years of hard work, life is coming back to uptown. Now it's time for the West Side to get the same attention. The next-gen project could be the catalyst for this transformation. New green technology in a new green neighborhood. Wollastock Park should not be sacrificed on the altar of commuting. If GDI really wants to spend money on accommodating its workers, they should be spending it building up the neighborhood, making the surrounding areas inviting for its employees. But I think it's mainly the role of the city to enable the expansion by executing on the 10-year strategy, making the location more connected, aligning public transit schedules with workers' needs, making Sims Corner pedestrian-friendly so GDI employees can walk to existing parking surfaces, extending the passage to connect Lower West with the paper mill for cycling and pedestrians. So I think this approach would mean less pollution, less wear and tear on our infrastructure. It means jobs going to locals or workers becoming part of the neighborhood. It strengthens ties between GDI and the community. It leaves more money in the pocket of workers to spend in the local economy instead of at gas stations. It gives them back time that they wasted in traffic so they can connect with their community. Home values would also rise, and so would the city tax income. And most of all, this approach would save Wollastock Park for us and future generations.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the presenter? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Just get you to give us your name for the record and address.
Hi, folks. Sarah Stashik. I'm an Uptown resident, used to be on the west side. I had submitted a presentation, but like some other folks who are here tonight, it would just be repeating what we've already talked about. I am very clearly in opposition of this application, and in the interest of time, let me focus on the real question here tonight, which is the $500,000. I'm going to apologize right now for my tone because I am irritated. I am irritated that we're here. I'm irritated that you folks were generous enough to give the applicant a second chance and to use more staff time and public resources to try to work this out, and they came back with what's effectively a slap in the face to this community. I am beyond on this. Part of the reason I'm so incensed by it is because I used to be a volunteer fundraiser for a local nonprofit. I walked into an organization that was falling apart a month away from claiming bankruptcy, had no resources, no volunteers, and no connections to this community. And in 9 months, we raised more money than JDI is willing to give this city for the permanent removal of this park and all of the downstream consequences that this community is going to experience because of it. So I can't believe that we're wasting our time with this. And I know the applicant is going to talk about the economic benefit of the Next Gen project. They already have. I'm sure they're going to want to come up and talk about it again. I'm sorry, if the applicant wants to separate the problems, the safety problems and the traffic congestion of Sims Corner from the Lancaster property, then they also have to separate the economic benefits, supposed benefits, to this community of the Next Gen project, because that's also on a different property. It's either in a bubble or it's not. The Wollastock Park is either part of a community ecosystem or it's not. You can't have one and not the other. Sorry, I'm just gonna collect myself for a second here. As far as this $500,000 go, to go back to the $500,000, like I said in the first public hearing on February 10th, the standard for a mega project in North America for a community benefit offering is in a range of 1% to 4% of the value of the mega project. That means that the community benefit offering to St. John should have started at $11 million, and you're being offered $500,000. Money that a bunch of volunteers with no resources can scramble together in the course of 9 months. Please just say no. Just say no. Let's just end this misery. You shouldn't have to come back here for first and second reading of any of the other options. None of you should have to spend any more time on this. Staff should not have to spend any more time on this. No more public resources should be put into this. Let me remind you, this parking lot is not necessary. It is a want from the proponent to make their recruitment efforts easier. It's not required to make the Next Gen project happen. As an employer, as I told you before, if I need to hire staff, it's on me to make that an appealing and competitive offer. It is not your responsibility, and I would never come knocking at your door and make that your problem. So please just say no. Let's just end this. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the presenter? Not seeing any. Thank you for being here this evening. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application. Get you to give us your name and your address for the record, please.
Evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Nick Cameron. I'm a West Side resident at Honeysuckle Drive. Coming in at the buzzer is a bit intentional because I'm undecided on this. I'm thinking through it, and hearing some of the information tonight is helping me come to my own conclusion, and just want to throw a few points out there to help you in your decision. I think the thing that folks are most interested in tonight are the new information, the public benefit that's being offered here. It's certainly generous. I don't think it's there's necessarily a lack of generosity there, but there are a couple of things that I'm interested in to sort of help my own thoughts and feelings on this. One, is it possible to make that pedestrian overpass accessible? And the other being, is there anything being offered in form of transportation demand management programs? I'll go into what I mean by those things. We have 4 options that are lined out here tonight. Deny, approve, temporary, and the 4th one, which I'm calling concrete. That's the thing that I can say with certainty is I'm certainly against option number 4. To borrow from the words of Mr. Mosier, concrete makes it permanent, and that's what concerns me most. Looking at the other options, I think option 1, to deny, is a default position when you have some of these uncertainties and contradictions with the municipal plan. And I agree with staff's assessment and why they would arrive to that recommendation. However, I think a lot of us in this room do appreciate the economic benefit that this Next Gen project is presenting, although that isn't what we're voting on here tonight. It's regarding parking. So returning back to staff's analysis here, they have talked about the impacts to the community and mitigation measures that are being taken. So let's look at that, and let's look at what's being offered here in that community benefit offering. Like I said, it's certainly generous. However, I do think those 2 points would be things that I'd be interested in knowing more about to understand, or really to help that mitigation piece. Additional trees or a circular trailer, that kind of thing, don't necessarily, they may mitigate some aspects, but certainly not the traffic concerns that we've heard about through this discussion. I am concerned about how Lancaster Avenue in our municipal plan is identified as a character corridor. Again, some of these beautification pieces help mitigate that, but ultimately what I'd like to see there is a more engaging development that isn't a parking lot that is not going to be occupied 100% of the time. A little bit of activity, people coming in and out of their cars, like that does kind of help activate the street a little bit, but a large portion of the life of that parking lot will be unoccupied, would be what some architects would call a dead zone. So does that contribute to Lancaster Avenue as being one of those character corridors that we identified in our municipal plan? So I'm struggling with the long-term contribution or long-term impact of this development, which is why option 3, the temporary use, I was interested to hear the applicant's thoughts on that tonight, and I guess I heard that. I heard that they're considering negotiations complete. I think earlier in the public hearing process, we heard at different times it being discussed as a temporary use, which is why Mr. Mosier said that they weren't comfortable with the concrete. However, then again, we're hearing tonight that there is a more long-term need there for the parking. However, I don't have the information here with me tonight, and I'd be certainly interested in seeing it if JDI could offer this. But if you look at their EIA that speaks about the peaks of workers coming to site, and I just have to imagine that these future turnaround events would be similar. There are temporary peaks. They tend to be 4-week events, those types of events. Transportation demand management programs are the types of things that can shave those peaks. An issue I've had with this process when we discuss options like a parking garage, busing, or carpooling is that it's an all or nothing, whereas instead I think there is a more nuanced approach there that is, there's no silver bullet. It's a mixture of all of these solutions. If perhaps carpooling can shave the peak by 1%. Perhaps transit can shave the peak by 2%, and all of these add up to help bring down that peak. And that's what I'm interested in hearing more about. So to wrap that up, can we make the pedestrian overpass accessible? Is that possible? If not, I believe council has to really consider that community benefit with a grain of salt, because it doesn't meet public standards. It's not truly accessible to the public, or certainly not the entire public population, where it isn't accessible for those with a disability, or even myself on a bicycle. It means I wouldn't be using it. I'm not going to lug my bike up and down, which means it's not going to help mitigate that traffic. We've heard a lot through this process as well that Sims Corner is an important trade corridor. I want to impress upon you as well that it is an important active transportation corridor. It's our only one. We cannot use Harbor Bridge. It's also part of the Trans-Canada Trail. So we've heard news about this working group with representatives from various groups. Me looking at it with my sustainable transit lens, it's a very truck and train heavy working group. Is the anyone from Trans-Canada Trail or anyone like on that group. So I'd really like to close with those two main points, the pedestrian accessibility, the accessibility of the pedestrian overpass and transportation demand management programs. Just so you know what I mean when I say that type of program, what I mean is it's easy to say we're going to encourage transit or carpooling. However, how are you going to accomplish that? I've mentioned to you in emails, and I've also sent this directly to JDI information email as well, that a good solution for that is the concept of parking cash out, which is if you have a cash value on the free parking that you provide your staff, parking does have a cost. That land isn't free, the maintenance of it isn't free, the snow removal isn't free. If you can put a cash value on that, offer it as cash to people that don't use it. Because otherwise what you're doing is incenting more driving, you're incenting more traffic. So it's a very easy solution. There are all kinds of ways to encourage either transit or carpooling, but that's one that kind of captures all uses. If workers want to decide that, you know what, you take the parking, I'll take the cash out, we'll split it, you let them figure it out on their own. You just offer that one program and the rest kind of figure it out. That's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Nick, for Mr. Cameron? All right. Thank you so much for being here this evening. All right. I'll ask for the last time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Okay. If we're done with speaking against the application, I'm going to move to, if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Get you to give us your name and your address, and then
Great, thank you. Arlene Dunn, and I'm here representing the St. John Construction Association as the CEO. I'm here as well on behalf of 720 people who signed a petition in support of this particular project. And these individuals are actually residing throughout the region as well as the west side. And within that 720 people, about 100 of them are actually JDI employees. 250 of them are individual contractor employees currently working on site. And then 370 of them are actually citizens at large. And just for the sake of the people that are watching here tonight, I would like to read the petition just so everybody understands what we are saying. So we, the undersigned, are writing to express our support for the proposed project at the Woolstock Park, which is a very crucial component of the Next Gen project. This parking lot will primarily serve the contractors and the workforce involved in the development of the Next Gen initiative, ensuring that the construction process proceeds smoothly while minimizing disruptions to the surrounding community. Importantly, the parking lot will occupy only 30% of the park's total area, preserving the majority of the park's natural beauty and recreational spaces. In addition, the park will receive a substantial investment to enhance its appearance and amenities, ensuring that it continues to be a valuable resource for residents and visitors alike for years to come. This project is a necessary step in supporting the success of the Next Gen initiative, while also improving Woolstock Park itself. We urge the City of St. John to approve the parking lot project, as it will provide the essential infrastructure needed for the workforce while contributing to the long-term revitalization as well as the beautification of the park. And I will also add to that, there's been a lot of talk in the city with respect to poverty. And as a member of the BCAPI initiative, I want to just go over some of the numbers that the city is experiencing. And it's beyond me when we talk about poverty, why we don't consider the fact that this is a massive economic opportunity for our city. It's also a massive economic opportunity to train kids who are suffering right now in poverty, to give them jobs on these very projects that we like to turn down. So just in terms of the numbers right now, in the greater St. John area, 1 in 7 youth from the ages of 15 to 24 are not in employment, education, or training, and we call them NEET youth. This is significantly higher than the Canadian average, which is 1 in 11. NEET youth by age and geography, 15 to 19 years of age, 360 kids in St. John, not in employment, not in training. 35 in Rothesay, 100 in Quispam-Sis. The age group 20 to 24, 745 kids in St. John, not in training, not in employment. Rothesay, 70. Quispam-Sis, 110. Total, St. John, 1,105 kids, not in training, not in employment, and no prospects. Rothesay, 105. Quispam, 210. In total, right now, we have 1,420 youth between the ages of 15 to 24 in St. John who are not in training and not in employment. Poverty in St. John, we talk a lot about it in the low-income neighborhoods. And in St. John's 5 low-income neighborhoods, 5,201 people are living in poverty, representing a significant portion of the region's challenges. Greater St. John, 16,600 people living in poverty. St. John's 5 priority neighborhoods, 5,201 people, or 31% of the low-income population in St. John. Residents in these neighborhoods experience poverty at a much higher rate of 49% compared to 13.4% poverty rate for broader St. John. New Brunswick has the lowest income mobility rate in Canada at just 6.1%. This means that people who live in poverty are less likely to rise out of it. High school graduation rates and dropout concerns, well, needless to say, we are teetering towards the edge. Our kids are not graduating. They're not fulfilling their educational opportunities. And in conclusion, and I would say to Councillor Ogden, thank you for saying that tonight, because people are disconnecting the fact that we have a project with substantive economic benefits, and that is a way to get people out of poverty. It's training and jobs. And if we can't see that as a city, then guess what? We've got blinders on. And I want to talk about that New York article that in the New York Times. I never saw one person from this city stand up for our city and talk to them about the fact that this is a very proud city. We have beautiful architecture here. The pictures I saw in that article were deplorable. That's one particular component of the city. I was waiting for the city leaders to come out and say, that's not our city. Our city's better than that. There's lots of good stuff happening, but not one person spoke about it.
I'm going to stop you right there really quickly. I've got yet 5 minutes. So if you want to talk about the two, what we've asked people to talk about, the differential on the application, and if you want to have an opportunity for councillors to ask you questions, I got to get you to the 10-minute mark, and that's the end of it. So
Thank you,
I'll
Your
leave it up
Worship.
to you for whatever you'd like to
No,
do.
I'm good. I think I've said enough. I think that people need to understand that there is a connection between economic development, job opportunities, training opportunities, and I know my colleague, Jean-Marc Ringette's going to come up and talk about this, but the fastest way to get these kids on a track to success is by opportunities for training and jobs. If we don't see that, we're missing the mark. And I'm open to questions.
Councillor Killen, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Arlene, I respect you so much, and I do not want this to come off as disrespectful at all. But in your industry in general, and I've come into this by witnessing the work that Brent's doing, how likely is it for a troubled youth, person who's come through the ringer, has had issues, to go through the hiring process at a JDI company or at any of the companies you're working with? Because what I understand about it, even when I applied at Kent and went through the process about 10 years ago, there was drug tests, there was, would you steal a pencil if it was your mother's pencil, for, if she needed one, all these really intense questions about character. So I have a hard time believing that there's these open arms, I guess, from the industry, from JDI, for those in marginalized positions. So if there is something I'm unaware of, I'd love to hear about it, because I think you're right. Opportunities, 100%. But when I see folks that can't get jobs on job sites because they have a DUI from 15, 20 years ago, like, how are we going to help these folks come out of poverty, right?
Yes, well, I think that those are very valid questions, and here's the difference. These individual kids are not actually applying to JDI. So as a contractors association, we have a partnership with every one of the unions who are going to be working at that site with all those contractors. So we've actually established a partnership recently with the St. John Learning Exchange, which is all encompassing. These kids will get their GED, they're going to get all the wraparound support services. We have union membership for them, and we have jobs. That's the difference. All these partners are coming together to say, look, we've got this fabulous project that's going to happen. Let's take advantage of it. And that's how we're going to do it.
Okay, that's a perfect answer. Thanks.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions for you. Thank you for being here this
Thank you.
evening. I'm going to take a motion for a quick break. Councillor Lowe? Thank you. Take a seconder on the question. All in favor? What will we do, like 5 minutes? Can we do 12 minutes? Or not 12, 5 or 8 minutes? 5 or 12? 5 or 6? up there, Jim. Can I call the meeting to order, please? Can I get my team back to the table? Who am I missing? Calling all counselors. Calling all counselors. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Oh my God, I need a gavel. I don't have a gavel. There we go. Okay, calling the meeting back to order. Perfect. Okay, City Clerk, what do I need now? Motion?
No, we are back in session.
We're
You
just
called
back
the
in
meeting
session?
back to
Oh,
order.
perfect, okay. All right, I will ask if there's anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Get you to come down, give your name and address for us, please.
Good evening, Jean-Marc Ringuette. I live at 3 Manor Sutton Road. I'm here tonight representing the 15,000 skilled men and women of the building trades here in our province. And I just might mention, you may want to get a big gavel. Seems to work for us. Call it back to order. I just want to maybe touch on some things that are probably new, and then and the community benefit part, like you said. So, and I kind of missed this on one of my other presentations. So, last fall when I first originally heard about this application, I wasn't really overly happy about it. And we're about the proposed parking lot. And I was like, geez, got to be a better way. So I went to the open house and I talked to, some of the guys in Irvine. I was like, well, let me go talk to the guy looking after this project. The guy who wears the work boots every day. So his name's Mark Fitzpatrick. I don't know if any of you guys took him up on his tour or whatever. I know he gave me one a couple times because I went through. And if you had a chance to go through. And so Mark and I did get together and we talked about it. I said, Mark, I'm not really sold on that. Why can't we park right on site? So we went down, he said, come down, here's the plans, here's the blueprints. So, we looked at it and we looked at the existing parking spot where the mill employees proper park. Well, when they go to work, they all go that way or that way. With a parking garage and the laydown areas and all that, we would have all our members going across an active construction site, various times, various staggered hours, very unsafe. So when we started looking at that, I said, well, you know what, Jesus, it kind of makes sense to have people over here coming right here because there's no activity going on, create a safety issue. So I just thought I'd bring that to light. And I think for us and for the members my members that will be working on that project, I really believe they deserve a safe and efficient way to travel to work, to get to their cars, whether you live on the east side and working on west side or whether you're in west side and east side. I believe that for all workers. I don't believe we need one that adds an hour to their day. I think that time is better spent with their families. I believe that time's better spent making an economy within our city. And at times, as you know, there's going to be peaks to any construction schedule. We're going to need people from outside. We're going to want to bring them in, and we want to attract them as much as we can. We're going to need those people. We're not going to need those people to finish the project. We're going to need those people to help train our apprentices that are going to go on and be the tradespeople of this city for the city. They're also going to be the people that are going to build houses, buy houses, and live and be active members in the community. I heard Councillor Wawanden's comment about the less fortunate people that would come in. So I happen to be the president of MAP Strategic Workforce Services, in which we do a lot of work. I've done projects with First in Trades, try to get Indigenous people active in the construction. Lots of projects in Women in Trades, which help engage women in the construction industry. And I will tell you, when you start adding hours to their day like that, it becomes hard for them because they don't have the access to childcare. School starts, school finishes, after school programs finishing. Putting an extra hour on an 8-hour day does not allow them to get the childcare they need. So we're just including part of our city there, which I just really think it is unfortunate. And finally, I think we need to consider the net positive value to the host city will bring in terms of the economy. The training opportunities for our youth that'll last for 40 years, setting them up as our next tradespeople, as I mentioned, the next citizens, the next homeowners, having families, and being successful in their life. This, in my mind, outweighs the inconvenience that comes with any growth. There are lots of people in Windsor, Ontario tonight that would gladly be inconvenienced by 15 or 20 minutes of traffic because they're without a job because of the tariffs.
Mr. Vignette, can I get you back to the land use here?
Yep.
Excellent.
Land use. Well, I think I want to state my point. These people need a place to park to complete this project for their life. The land use part, when we talk about the park being disturbed, if you're taking 30% of the park and putting rock on it, we got a park over in North End that's all rock. In fact, it's named after one. I find it hard for me that we would not consider the upgrades, especially the new incentives with Dominion Park, et cetera, and not think of that as a net positive and look at the whole thing overall as positive for the city and positive for the citizens.
We do have a question for you. Councillor Radwan has a question for you. Councillor Radwan, you have a land use question, please?
I am so sorry for mispronouncing your name. As someone
That's
named
okay.
Jean-Marc Ringuet, I get it a lot.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, and I'm going to really ask all the union reps that come up here from now on, if you don't mind. I would love to hear about any training programs that you currently have for our local youth and young people that you're trying, because it seems to be something that it's a carrot being waved right now. We're going to train our youth, the underprivileged. I'd love to hear if you have programs, how many people of our young people are going to be in it. And no, it doesn't really have to do too much with land use, but when you're taking away a public benefit, then that is a public gain. So I think that it does have some rationale. So if you have any, just let me know. I would love that.
Okay, that is not, that's a conversation between you two about what you're doing for youth training. I'm trying to get this back to land use for this project to move forward. So it's land use that we're looking at. That's a whole other different subject.
I know, but this is part of the conversation that keeps coming up to the podium. So
Is it going to help you make your decision of whether which way you're going on this? Because if it isn't, then okay, well, you'll have, no, I can't allow that. That's
But maybe economic
because we'll have
benefits shouldn't be
every,
discussed at the podium at all. Like, it should just be shut down at the podium.
well, we can do that too. All right, I don't see any other questions for you though.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'll take the next speaker who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. I'll get you to give us your name and your address.
Evening, Councillor, Mayor. My name's Dave Marathie. I'm from the Far East, Ward 4. Just a few things on my mind concerning this and the question in mind. Is the first thing that comes to me is that I don't know if in my mind that we can hold business or industry accountable for the planning of our roads and structures done decades ago. I'm talking about Sims Corner, all right? I see we haven't done it on the east side. And by the way, there's a project starting there April the 7th, I understand, May. That terrible election is going to get fixed, that terrible intersection. And you didn't get that done without the win that you people have achieved, which is $500,000, all right? And by the way, it's more than that. $500,000 does not include the $2.1 or so million to improve the park, okay, to put the running track in, to put their overhead in, to replace the statues. So it's far more than $500,000 we're talking about. I don't know that we can hold business accountable for that. I would ask you to lean on your politicians. It will get done. Any forward movement in your city will have a bearing on your infrastructure. It will have a bearing on your infrastructure. That's a good thing. It's growing pains. And it will get fixed. Lean on your politicians. Don't lean on the business. I don't think that's what we should be doing. Secondly, the parking lot itself, when it comes to family matters, I know there are people here that have children. I don't have small children now, but I think it matters that you put an hour and a half a day into their lives, that they're not getting picked up in some distant place rather than parking across from this project. I think it's important. all right? You're representing the citizens of the city and southern part of the province here, and I think that matters dramatically. The third thing that comes to mind, and this is $1.1 billion, it's massive. This is a massive endeavor for a marvelous corporate citizen, okay? That it was massive 48 hours ago. I can't tell you how much more massive it is after the tariffs have been implemented by President Trump. That this company still wants to go forward with this. Any place, and I mean any place in North America, would have this in a heartbeat. It's just changed water on the bean so much in the last 48 hours. But they're still willing to go forward. All they want is some help from you folks. All right? And again, you've got a good and a prosperous win for the city. Thank you for that. Last thing is that I do believe that whether they're tuning in now here to see us at Rogers, or someone will tune in to a taped portion of this whole conversation years from now, you are being watched, okay? It's important. The world is watching you right now, the decision you're about to make. That you have industry here, locally, a great partner, has been a partner for decades with the city, that wants to put $1.1 billion, okay, of employment and prosper into the city, and they want a decision from you, and a positive one. I implore you to make that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you before you have a seat. Councillor Sullivan.
Hey, Gary.
Apologies,
Councillor.
Your Worship, I'm taking 30 seconds off topic, but Mr. Merrithew hasn't been in front of us, and he talked about leaning on politicians.
Yes.
Just want to publicly thank you for the work you did that we're leaning on now when you were Chair Finance Committee. Sorry it has nothing to do with tonight, but haven't seen you,
Okay,
and you're here, so thank you.
Good.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take the next speaker. Would like to speak in favor of the application?
Jim Irving, 300 Union Street.
Is that where you live?
Most of the time. It seems like most of the time I'm in the office. And councilors, I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk this evening. Look, a couple of things. One is, it's unfortunate that we've come to sort of a uncomfortable situation here on this project, because I don't like to have any, tension with the city and you folks. We do a lot of business with the city, back and forth on all kinds of things. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to take the temperature down on this, I would hope. Number two, I kind of, when Mark Mosier came to me and said, we want to spend $6 million to put a parking area up on anywhere, I said, my God, you can't do that. That's too much money. What are you doing? Why? And went through quite an exercise and took me through all the site. The mill site over there, it's been there since the 1800s. It's a very small piece of land, too small to have a pulp mill on. And we've had to reclaim land, and we've had to build land to expand the mill to make it competitive. You know the story, you've heard it all. And what we're trying to do is to make sure we have a first-class facility when this is all done. And it'll be here for generations, and environmentally right, paying good wages and taxes that you remind me of quite regularly, that you're looking for all the time. You're doing a good job.
How much in taxes?
I'm sure it'll never be enough if you're the mayor's.
You're probably correct.
But because you're dogged about making sure you squeeze every dollar, which is your job.
It is my job.
So look, we got a park there. We'd like to take a piece, use as little as possible, and as low as cost as possible, frankly, because we're going to spend a lot of money on a lot of other things. But we'd like to get that done as easy as possible and as quickly as we can, and we'd like your support for that. That's one issue. The other issue is we're tying Sims Corner into this, and I get that. And it's a problem. It's got to get fixed. It's been a problem a long time. And Barry, you talked about the taxes, or the not getting the tax dollars here, and talking about Frederick. I went to work on Blaine Higgs about that, because you and I talked about that a number of times, and I went to bat for it. We weren't successful on that one, but because it looks like you're not getting enough money out of the business in St. John, because it's going to Fredericton and it doesn't come back. I get that, and that's our job collectively, to work with you to try and make that happen. And I'm here tonight to tell you, I'm all on board with that, because if you've got enough tax dollars, number one, you're going to leave me alone. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But we got to get that fixed. So that's job one. The other thing is, I've talked to federal ministers, I've talked to the head of the CNCP, or the CPKC, the railway, Keith Creel, about this, talked to the Premier. We got to fix Sims Corner. And I'm more than happy to put my shoulder to the wheel. If you want to deputize me to go to work with Brent here on the negotiation, we're more than happy to step up to that job and give you a hand, because I know what it's like dealing with the government. And Fredericton and Ottawa, unfortunately, we got a lot of experience of that. But that's what we have to deal with. So you can count on our support. I've told you that, Your Worship, before. We're more than happy to work shoulder to shoulder with you to get this thing fixed. Because got a long-term plan for the mill, and over time, there'll be other things we'll have to do. That's why we're very careful about the land. There'll be other buildings we have to build, and other things are going to change. So that's what we're planning on, but we'd appreciate your support on this, and you can count on our support. I'm talking about item 2 there, whenever it is on the chart, item 2, I think. And then go to work, put us to work here on fixing Sims Corner with you. You'll have a good partner with us, I can tell you that. So thank you very much for your time. That's all. Oh, well, I'll take any questions you might have as well.
Councillor Sullivan, you're up first.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Irving, for being here.
No problem.
Something you just touched on about long-term plans for the mill and more building beyond next gen.
Yeah.
So is it in, maybe not detail, but the long-term plan to fill the current parking lots on the mill side with other buildings and infrastructure?
I say that not knowing exactly what we're going to have to do. But, you know, the world doesn't stand still, and the environmental requirements don't stop, and energy costs don't go down, and all these logistical things we have to deal with. So I don't know exactly. All I know is we're on a postage stamp trying to run a world-class facility, and somebody down the road will be thanking us if we've got the thing well organized. So I don't know exactly how much land we're going to need, but all I know is, given we've owned that place for 80 years, and there's never been enough land. So
thank you.
Hope
Thank you.
that
Thank you,
answers
Richard.
your question. Sure.
Councillor Lowe, you're next, please.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Irvin. Like, when the speaker first spoke, he said you weren't interested in number 3, not the temporary parking lot.
Yeah.
But it states that after 5 years, it could go back to council or PAC again and be approved and extended so that it could be used again for that, and then also could be used for an overpass. And I understand exactly the need for the workers, you know, you'd be lucky if you get 500 from outside, but I understand where you're coming from. But also, it's in, you know, I'm going to mention Sims Corner because you mentioned it. I would never mention unless you mentioned it, right? You started it, right? But the idea is that it's either DTI or it's got to be the provincial government that'll start it, or the feds, and it's got to. But we got the port that's willing to get involved. We got the container people. The container people give me $50,000 for a park over at West Side. I mean, that's the kind of people they are. We got the railway, and you know who those people are, OCP, and yeah, that's right. You own that one. That's right. And we got.
No, we don't own the CP. Let's
No.
get that straight.
I know which one you own. And we got Dever Road, which is going well, which I voted for too at the time.
Yeah.
So if you can accept the idea that you come back to council in 5 years, and you're a good speaker, so I'm sure that you could sway a council of the day to agree to extend it.
No,
And then you got what you want.
No, I tell you, Jerry, to spend the kind of money we're spending, all of this business, we don't want, you know, you're a good fellow, and you know, you're going to be here for 5 years, and and take this on again, we're spending the money, we got to know where we're going. Because that mill, when we have peak shutdowns, and Mark said it'll go anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, there'll be up to 1,300 people on that site. And we've got to manage that very efficiently. Wages are very expensive. We've got to have men and women to be able to get to the job site efficiently. So we can't do that in terms of saying, well, it's just for 5 years. We're not going to do that. But we'll certainly work any way we can with the city, and you can count on that, to try and solve this problem of Sims Corner. It's in your best interest, our best interest. It's the city. Right? We're living in here. We're St. Johners. I live in Rossay, but I grew up in St. John. But we have the business here. We got over 4,000 employees working in the city of St. John. We got a payroll that's $340 million, $85,000 a year in average salaries. We're spending $250 million per year in the last 5 years with local goods and services. That's a lot of money. And we're spending, contrary to some folks here perhaps, well over $2 million a year on just things, whether it's PALS or the food bank or mowing the grass at Nature Park, all that stuff. It happens all the time. We don't talk about it. Or putting $3 million in the museum to make that go, or money out at the community college. We're St. Johners, and we want the place successful. You and I went to Ottawa to try and get money, okay, on the housing side. And we got some money. We didn't get enough, though, given that stage of the housing. And I know I'm getting off topic here. But this is about St. John. And we should fix this, and we should not look back and go ahead. But I can tell you something. You got a good partner with us, and we're with you. So, any other questions?
Yes, Councillor Radwan has a question. I'll send it over to her.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Irving. I certainly appreciate all that you do in our community. I struggle with something, and I've been struggling with it for a little bit, and then I really started to think about everything that I know from around the world.
Sure.
And, the fact that council's been kind of told that we shouldn't be talking traffic. We talk traffic almost every public hearing. Like, this is not a attack on JDI or anything, right? Like, this is almost every big public hearing, there's talk about traffic.
Right.
And it's already a problem there, right? Sims Corner has been a nightmare for your staff, right? So in other countries, many other countries worldwide, if businesses want to do business, they do put the money out for infrastructure for the municipalities. So I'm struggling with that because I know that this happens all over the world. And that's how some municipalities have frankly gotten really built, is the businesses look at, I want to do this on the waterfront, and they say, sure, but you need to do A, B, and C. And they go, okay. And they do it, and they're successful, and I've been happy to see your success. So, I'm feeling a little bit badly that St. John's looking like, oh, well, we shouldn't be talking about it because, frankly, this happens worldwide.
Well, I would disagree with you respectfully that it happens worldwide. It maybe, I don't know, in another part of the world, I don't know, but I can tell you in North America here, it doesn't. And, we've got businesses all around, and that's what we pay taxes for, on gasoline and diesel and all the rest of it, to build roads and build the infrastructure. So, but there's no question about it. It's the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Sure.
And we've got to be a bit of a squeaky wheel, get to Ottawa. Ottawa should carry it. Look, as we all know, there's no money in Fredericton these days, big deficit, so on and so forth. Deficits in Ottawa too, but they have more to work with. So our job is to get that fixed. And I agree with you. The Harbour Bridge, that's a shambles. That's terrible to put up with that for 6 or 7 years, the way it's going. We should be quite tough-minded about that, because that's not acceptable to anybody. Shouldn't be acceptable to anybody in this room, as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Irving, just lastly, if you don't mind me saying, do you see how this, public benefit, there's not a whole lot, right in that area is the Woolastook Park. That's what people have to do there, right? So you probably understand how council is going.
Well, look,
it's taking the public benefit away.
I understand it's always controversial, and you got change, and it was a park. And look, we pay you $25,000, $30,000 a year in taxes alone for that park. And another 30 or 40 out there at the nature park. But that's okay. We got citizens, we got friends, we got employees. We want the city to be better. And someone mentioned, the article, I'm getting off topic, sorry. But, I was just as annoyed about that article in the New York Times about St. John I spent a couple hours today with PR people, and we're writing a response to that, because that's terrible, terrible. So we're gonna straighten that out from our side.
Well, we couldn't talk about anything to do with the public
I
hearing.
don't want to take up too much of your time here in all this business, but you can count on us as a good partner, Worship, and we'll make things happen.
Thank you. I will read this that you sent me, the quote. You sent me a quote from Winston Churchill. And it said, "Some people regard private enterprise as predatory tiger to be shot. Others look on it as a cow to be milked. And not enough people see it as a healthy horse pulling a sturdy wagon." You claim to be that healthy horse. But here, I'm not done.
If I'm a tiger, you'd shoot me, so.
A healthy horse that needs a sturdy cart. And so what this suggests to me is a partnership. And that's what we're asking for. Sims Corner is one thing, but we're asking for a partnership with the amenities for the city. And you know that we only have one way to collect money, and that's through property tax. And you know that machinery and equipment is not subject to that. And you know that it's limited property tax that we get. And we try to run the city and provide things for businesses, and we try to attract business. We try to do all that on a shoestring budget and reduce the tax rate for citizens who are paying 62% of the $197 million that we're getting, while heavy industry is only paying 9%. So we're looking for a real partnership. And so you've come with $500,000. And I mean, that to me is a start. But we're looking for a real partnership with that. And we're looking for, and your voice should be there with Sims Corner, because you use it.
Sure.
And your trains go through it, and your trucks go through it.
But I tell you something about Sims Corner for the trains. I don't need Sims Corner for our business. For years, we ran a railroad. We never went to the port. There was nothing in the port. The port was dead. We didn't need the Sims Corner, the trains. Forget about it. Our product's all going, if it's going to the port, it's going on a truck. If it's going by rail, it's going to Boston, New York, someplace else by rail, going westbound. So, that's the facts. So, but we got a great port. Somebody spent $250 million or more down there. We should make it work. They're looking for longshoremen. Those guys are making big money. That's what pays taxes. You want tax dollars? That's where we get it from.
They don't live in St. John. That big money doesn't live in St. John. We both know that. That big money lives where you live.
Well, I tell you, maybe we could get a few things fixed up. We'd have more of them moving back into the city.
That's what I'm talking about. If we got more amenities from business, if we had help with that.
Yeah, and I tell you, just a point about Fredericton and getting your share of the tax dollars. I'm 100% for that, and that's what it should be. Shouldn't go into the general fund in Ottawa or Fredericton. Should come back here to you.
I got one more quick question for you from the deputy. Wrap it up, deputy.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for coming in, Mr. Irving. Just for clarification, okay? When you started to speak, you said that the plans had called for a parking garage, and Mr. Mosier said, why would we do that when we spend $6 million when we've got that property across the street? Makes sense.
No, that's not what I said. I spent $6 million on anything. And what happened to us, to give you the whole story, we were going to put the boiler on the backside of the mill, down by Lee Cove. That's where we started. And then the soils were very bad down there. The farther we went, and the cost and so on, and the congestion, we said the parking lot we have up on top of the hill is a current parking lot. We said we put the boiler up there for a whole lot of reasons that I won't go into. But that's how we got up on top of the hill, and we took all our land, our surplus parking, we took it to put the boiler up there because the backside of the mill, the soil was bad, and we did all kinds of studies. And
okay.
So there's just some logic.
So I misunderstood what you said.
No, that's it. No.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
No, it was my misunderstanding. I thought that the original plans called for a parking garage on the site.
No. I never, listen, parking garage, Woolstick Park, none of it. I want none of it. I wanted to all stay on the job site and not spend any money. But that didn't materialize because we had to move the boiler, and this thing is enormously expensive. So we're counting every dollar.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's it for questions. But I was kind of hoping you were coming back with, I'm doing up Dominion Park Beach in style and putting $3 or $4 million into it.
Oh,
that was my dream. But anyways, that's fine. Write your time limit.
One thing about you, Your Worship, you're consistent. You never let go. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the next speaker who'd like to speak in favor of this application. Come on down, give us your name And your address, please.
My name is Sandy Robertson, and my address is 409 Woodward Avenue in St. John. I've been a businessman in St. John for over 50 years and paid taxes. And as a businessman, I've paid a lot more taxes rate-wise. Like, for instance, when I had the 46 Princess Street, I was paying $527 a hundred when my residential was $1.78, I think it was at the time. And I'm confused by some of this tax talk, but anyway, the thing that I want to address tonight, I am in the water treatment business, and I have sold water treatment to every pulp and paper mill, not every, a lot of pulp and paper mills. I actually didn't sell it to Irving's. I was going to, if they were going to use a process where that berm is down below the mill. But that got changed. Anyway, over the years, I've supplied mills, including Miramichi Pulp and Paper, which I'll just read you a thing. This is a CBC News posted September 29th, 2004. Miramichi's largest forestry operation is closing its kraft pulp mill and restructuring its entire woodlands division, laying off approximately 1/3 of its 1,280 employees. I was the largest employer in the mill. Further on in the article, it says, it is the second major mill closure to hit central New Brunswick in 2 weeks. The town of Nackwick is still reeling from the abrupt closure of the St. Anne Nackwick mill on September 14th. More than 400 people lost their jobs when mill owners Parsons and Whittemore shut the operation down with warning and filed for bankruptcy. The company said it had been losing money for years and couldn't justify keeping the mill open any longer. The New Brunswick government is searching for a buyer for the mill. Now back to the Miramichi bill. The company said they can't justify spending money on upgrades. The average competitive kraft mill today is cost efficient and 3 to 4 times larger than this one. Anyway, but that's not the worst. Well, in that interim, I sold them water treatment filters, and the reason was they got carbon black in their paper, and I forget their customer, whether it was New York Times or Washington Post, that they ended up with a load rejected and told, don't do that again or we won't be buying your paper. So I was lucky to get a call, and because every other time I called them, it was, we can only put money into production, nothing in water, nothing in anything other than production. I get this call, can you be up here? What's up? So I was there in about 3 hours. Didn't know what was going on. They said, look, we got this disaster with the mill. We've got to do some filters right now, like quick.
Can I stop you for a minute? I don't mind the history lesson, but do you have anything for us on the land use that we're here for tonight?
For the land use, yeah.
Okay, can we go there?
Yeah, okay. Well, if this doesn't go ahead, land use, it's going to close. It wouldn't surprise me to see the mill close, but the second shoe dropped in Miramichi when the paper mill was closed in December 2007, and the rest of the employees lost their jobs, okay? I hope that you understand that. And the problem that we have is basically, not that long ago, in my time, is in 1995, there were 85 mills in this province between sawmills and pulp mills. Look how many are left now. I'm sitting there looking and saying, how can you as a council not realize the importance of this? And you're going to give this city, if you turn this down, the worst black eye, and we're not welcome for business. We're not looked at as open for business. And I hope you realize the cost of this. As a businessman, I've dealt with it for 50 years. And the negativity is only getting worse. You have to get ahead and make this happen. That's it.
Thank you for being here this evening. I don't see any questions. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take the next speaker who'd like to speak against the application. Pardon? Sorry, in favor. Get you to give us your name and your address, please, for the record.
Terry Nealon. I live in the west side, and I'm for that parking.
Okay. Excellent. Did you want to expand on that, or do we? You're good?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Yes, yeah, we've got a question for you. Councillor Stewart, over to you for a question.
Thanks, boss. So you're a proud West Sider.
That's right.
Do you not have any concerns at all about that additional traffic?
Hey,
going into Sims
I
Corner?
travel that from west side to east every day, 4 or 5 times a day, and I don't have a problem.
Never have a
not-
problem at Sims Corner?
No,
Trains, transports?
well, I mean, sure, trains, but that doesn't bother me. My oldest fella lived up in Toronto there for a while, and after being up in Toronto, that's a joke. You know, really.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the next speaker who'd like to speak in favor of the application. I'll take the next speaker. If there's anyone else who'd like to speak in favor, come on down, give us your name and your address, please.
Dave Morehouse, I live in Ocean Westway, West Side, 51 years. I'm kind of excited when I hear some money going towards Dominion Park and the Harbor Passage. My family uses Dominion Park in the summertime, winter. We're ice fishing, part of the association. We use Harbor Passage. Woolastook Park. I go up when the kids have their track and field. Went up once for fireworks, cold and windy. If we're putting money into something, Dominion Park, and I like your idea, I'd like to see a boat launch there. But what do I use the most? Harbor Passage, Dominion Park, Woolastook. It's nice to have, cold and windy. We don't use it as a family. I haven't heard too many speakers come up here and say that they go up there and use it. They're just concerned about keeping parks parks.
Any questions? Well, if you use Dominion Park Beach, you must want to see it done up in style then.
You know, absolutely. Boat
Okay.
launch.
Sounds good. Okay, I'll take the next speaker who would like to speak in favor of the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. I'll ask for the third and final time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. And if not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, so I'm going to ask my team if you have any questions for staff regarding this. Councillor Harris, over to you first.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Haven't said anything all night. You know, I don't like the position that we're in right now. There's a lot of creative people that have been opposed. There's some creative people, I think, that are in favor. I think there's some talented people on this staff. But to get to the relationship point, there's not a good working relationship between these different groups. And we're at a point now where we're being asked to pull the trigger on something without that level of relationship to kind of suit it. And so it's a real hard fit. My question is one for clarity. I think this goes to the clerk, but it also might go to Ms. Boucher. Council is within its right to impose Section 57s to be voted on for third reading, are we not? And I'll just send that to the clerk or to Ms. Boucher, it doesn't matter to me. So, sorry, Section 59s, not the old ones, yeah.
So any, yes,
Yes,
essentially.
okay.
But Section 59 conditions, I just want to make clear, are only imposed after third reading.
Correct.
So
But they don't have to be on paper tonight to be voted on for third reading. They can come to us for third reading.
No, yeah, that's exactly what your director
Right.
of planning had suggested
Okay.
during his presentation,
Yeah.
was that if you, any options other than option 1 or 2 need to be directed back to staff to prepare the necessary bylaws
Okay.
and other corresponding documents.
Sure. I will move option 2. Not because I'm a huge fan of the proponent, but because I do think the country is in a place right now where we need to see some amenability between all 3 levels of government and business. There has been a shift among the people I talk to about this project, a lot of opposition. Now there's a lot of anxiety, and I'm picking up on it here tonight. But I do think it is unreasonable to push a project like this through and set a precedent for a 0.4% contribution to the quality of life in the city. I spoke before about a community wealth fund for the Carleton Community Center, because it's clear to me that only the people closest to the problem are best suited to solve it. I don't see that in our Section 59s. We've got money for the parks, that's fine. We're losing private park to gain some public park infrastructure, that's fine. But I personally want to see a community wealth fund that goes straight to the Carleton community so we can direct that group that lives there to maneuver the community from a community development and economic development perspective into a better position than before this project. And that number for me is $2 million, not $500,000. So I move option 2 and direct staff to come back with Section 59s that we can impose for third reading valued at $2 million, not $500,000. Thank you. If I get a seconder, we'll go. If we don't, it dies.
Mike on. Well, I'd like to get a seconder on that. Speak first. I should get a seconder first on that. No seconder? Okay, I'll go to, well, we'll see what happens at the end. Councillor Ogden, you're up next.
Option 2 too. And one thing I'm pleased, being a lifelong St. Johner, I'm pleased that we are talking about working together. I think that's when part of our demise of our city in the industrial tax loss of 66 years. But there's a huge traffic problem in West St. John, and I want to get that solved. And tonight we talked about us working together to get Sims Corner solved. It is, if you look at the federal policies about trade, and the tariffs are going to make it even more, that getting federal money into that. So I'm leaning towards 2, that we're going to work together. And I guess it's partly what Brenda's saying about Carleton, because that is a community, priority community, is that we need to solve our poverty and our education problem. And I don't think you can separate them. And, you know, when we talk about working together, economic development, I don't think economic development, you can take poverty and education out of economic development. For a long time, we used to. And I think St. John's a perfect example, because when it comes to poverty and education, we are in one of the worst places in the whole country. And here we have a chance to start anew. And so that's where I stand. I'd like to hear other speakers first, but I do like number 2, if we can involve solving the terrible traffic problem and our poverty and education. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question through you to staff. The current IPP site, is it entirely zoned industrial? Like, if we were to follow option 2 and approved a permanent parking lot across the street, would there be any more public hearings or anything required if IPP decided to turn all the parking that's currently on site into future industrial stuff?
I'll send that over to the acting commissioner for the night.
Through your worship, the existing site, IPP site, is zoned heavy industrial, but I didn't fully capture your second question relating to
it was all captured in one. So if the whole site is zoned heavy industrial and we approved the Woolastook Park parking lot tonight to be permanent, then there would be no further need for a public hearing should IPP decide to make that entire postage stamp site industrial and put more buildings and boilers and whatever the future technology is, and then they would have permanent parking across the street.
They are suggesting a special area zone which mimics the park zone, with the exception of allowing a large parking lot. That would not allow them to put industrial buildings.
No, but it would allow them for that 500 parking spot site in Woolastook Park to potentially become their permanent parking site
It would. If we approve the zoning the way they have proposed it, special area 6, it would be permanent.
Okay, thank you, that's my question.
The vast majority of the site is zoned heavy industrial, but there is a strip that is still zoned light residential where I believe the houses, or RL, where the houses would have been just on the boundary.
Councillor Redwan, over to you. You have a question?
Mayor, yes, I just have a couple of questions. So Jen, since you're on that, can you tell me what strip of land is zoned that, first of all? And I have a second question for you. Like, is it? Do you know where it is? Just wondering what side of the mill it might be on. I'm just curious more than anything.
So it's a strip of land along Milford Road.
Okay.
Adjacent to Seal Edge Court to about Kingsville Road.
Okay, no, that's great. And just, I since you're here, Jen, if I can ask you, I just wanted a clarifying question. We had a schedule, Punkage was going through his schedule, and it said, of course, on Monday, we would have third reading. But there's some things in here, I don't know if it's the section 59 and 131, if we have them. Are we, like, if we were to do any of these options, I guess my question is, will that pass through first and second reading so that we're on schedule to finish everything for third reading on Monday?
I'd say it depends on the scale of what council wishes to maybe discuss or add as section 59 conditions.
Okay.
Some of them may require some extra time for us to work through the logistics.
Okay.
Especially if we do need to have any discussions with the applicant. What could be done is first and second reading, and then staff can be given time, likely not come back at the next meeting with the additions, but at a subsequent meeting.
Okay.
So that we can work with GCO to make sure it's worded properly.
Thank you.
Councillor Lowe, over to you.
Yeah, we're all talking about, I favor options 3. But I would like to ask the question of the city. If it's temporary parking lot for 500 stalls for the 5 years, how do you go beyond that? How does, if the employer wants to extend the parking lot, because this one says it remains gravel, I believe, how does the employer get beyond that to use it for different things?
Through your worship, if the applicant wanted to add more parking, they would have to come and amend the zoning and ask for more area to add the stalls. Conversely, if there are no conditions in the approved zoning, like we don't put any condition about how many stalls, then that opens the door for them to maximize whatever parking they can accommodate within the land that is being rezoned. So they are also asking for a bit of a deviation from our regular parking standards, spacing, how many rows and whatnot. So it would just open up to how many parking stalls they can accommodate if we don't put any conditions on the number of parking stalls.
Yeah, I'm not asking to increase the stall space or the parking space. I'm asking for beyond the 5 years is what I'm asking. So do they come back, does JDI come back to council or PAC, I guess, first, and ask for an extension of the 5 years? That's what I'm asking.
Accurate, they would have to come back at the end of 5 years or just before the zoning expires and go through another process of a rezoning application to extend it to whatever it is that they want to do.
Okay.
And could you explain to me, under funding, the idea of the $3 million for the city, if it says if the province of New Brunswick requests more than the $3 million from the city. That's for the turnaround, is it not, or so explain what that means.
Through your worship, that is exactly what is contemplated today. If the province came back and asked for more than $3 million, at that point, we would ask for a proportionate share from JDI about whatever that contribution is. So city would provide 3 million, and the rest of it, we would have to determine how many players are involved and determine a proportionate share.
Anyways, I moved it, if I get a second.
You're moving that? Is there a seconder on option 3 then?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stewart, okay. Councillor, Deputy Mackenzie, you're up next to speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, I wasn't expecting the motion, but thank you for making the motion. I guess my question then is, if option 1's out, through you, Your Worship, to the city manager perhaps, if option 1 is off the table, what option would staff prefer other than option 1?
Through Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor, really we're looking at providing options to council based upon the feedback received at the last public hearing. And so the last public hearing, when I had inquired in terms of, is it council's wish to make it permanent or temporary, the parking lot, I think the only feedback received was from Councillor Sullivan as it related to, if it's temporary, it requires a certain amount of community benefits, and if it's permanent, it has to be much greater, something to that effect. And so it was on that basis that we came up with additional options for council's consideration, being option 3, temporary, and option 4, permanent.
Okay. Okay, fine. So I guess at the end of the day, I mean, I've supported every project from Elliott Road to, you name it. And I want to support this one. But at the same time, I don't want to say yes to everything you're asking for and no to everything you guys are asking for. I think there's a middle of the road here. I think it's fair. Everything I've seen has asked to have parking for the next gen project, which I think is fair to have that parking, no question about it. Does that mean that it's got to go on for 50 years? I don't think so. I think if the project takes 5 years, you got 5 years. And come back to council, you need another 5 years. We'll see what happens. But I think to get it off the ground and get it going, I'm going to support it for what I've been asked. And I mean, I read the petitions and everything. Nobody talked about a lifetime parking lot. They all talked about the Gen X project and making it happen and getting the parking places for it. So I think, if that's your motion, Councillor Lowe, I would certainly get behind that and get this project up and running for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, over to you next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to speak to the motion, particularly around this public hearing, I've spent a lot of time just explaining to everybody who asks, what does council have to do with public hearing? Bit of a shout out to our solicitor's office. That we sit as a quasi-judicial board, and I explained it kind of like a whole bunch of Judge Judy's. We listen to the pros and the cons and the fors and the against, and we make a decision. And it's a bit of a piggyback on what the Deputy Mayor just said. I don't think there's any question about the neighborhood taking some pain over the next 5 years to get next gen happening. What I haven't been satisfied with the discussion is what happens after 5 years. We talked about it at PAC, we talked about it at the first round of this public hearing, and we talked about it again tonight, that really there is, for me, not a convincing argument that it become permanent yet. The other piece in this follows exactly what Councillor Harris was talking about, and I don't think we're that far off in our thoughts, that for this to become a permanent change to a park, the future is, and I think it makes sense, St. John didn't build and design this way. We grew around an oil refinery, we grew around a mill, and so it is part of our neighborhood. But the likelihood that become permanent parking with the mill continuing to expand over the next decades, I see that as a likelihood. And at this point in time, I don't think, well, I can just speak for me. I'm not prepared to say that's a permanent parking lot with the information that I received on my question tonight, that likelihood of expansion without more public consultation and conversation. And at the end of the day, I appreciate the $500,000 contribution to recreation at Dominion Park and Harbor Passage. If this is going to be a permanent parking lot with more permanent expansion, likely encroaching on the west side, that needs to be a longer conversation about community benefit. And for me, $500,000 isn't the community benefit required for that. And until we know more, Councillor Harris, I think you may be selling us a little short at the $2 million if that decades down the road expansion happens. So, but I do take the point on we need some surety, we need to get moving. So let's get moving. Let's get the parking lot done so that we can get into next gen and continue the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go to Councillor Stewart next for round one. For you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to make it clear to everybody that this has obviously been contentious for us. But there's one thing that I'm pretty confident in saying, that we all believe in this project. We all want this to happen. Sims Corner presents a huge problem for me because I travel it every day. My customers complain about it every day. So by putting forward option 3, I understand it ties you guys a little bit, but it also, the business person in me says that it gives the city a little bit of control on what happens in 5 years, because everybody in this room knows that in 5 years, a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can change. People that are here today may not be here in 5 years. We want to be partners. We want to be good partners, as you guys do. So I want to encourage that, but having that 5-year cap on this, if you will, ensures that the council of the day will at least have a say if things have changed in the meantime. So that's why I would second this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen, I'll go to you for round one.
We're on to comments now, pretty much, would you say,
Yep.
Your Worship? Sorry, yeah, okay, good. Good, okay. This one's been so tough. It's my ward. It's a place that I ride by every day, and it's a beautiful park that overlooks our stunning city. But we face a critical choice tonight. It's, do we sacrifice protected parkland for private industrial convenience, or uphold our municipal plan's integrity? I also have not appreciate the tone and the aggressive lobbying efforts. I don't appreciate that on any public hearing wherever anyone's exceptionally aggressive and trying to shame us into making a decision. I don't think that's effective. Policy really does matter, and we're trying to prevent industrial encroachment onto green spaces and not put something in permanently that we can never take back. This violates that covenant and sets a dangerous precedent. If we industrialize parks for parking, there's, a number of other projects in the JDI has taken on for public benefit that could be taken away at any time. Traffic safety. The amended proposal still fails to address anything to do with Sims Corner's F-rated intersection. There's no mitigation plan. Pedestrian risks beyond the own bridge, you don't seem too concerned about it. Staff confirm this still threatens neighborhood safety. The next thing, disproportional benefits. Let's be clear, a $500,000 offer is appreciated, but it only represents 0.05% of the $1 billion mill upgrade. It's like spending $5 on a $1,000 purchase and calling it a fair deal. It devalues the value of the park, in my estimation. More importantly, alternatives do exist, and staff have repeatedly confirmed JDI's own site can host structured parking. It's not about rejecting progress, it's about demanding responsible solutions that don't trade permanent parking lots for temporary contractor parking. it isn't just about parking as well. We value green spaces and our community values well-being over corporate shortcuts. I support our staff in making this very difficult decision. I know that they want to support growth at every freaking turn. And so I know that this would have been incredibly difficult for them. I voted against Lancaster Logistics Park when I first got here because there wasn't enough public benefit, and I still hear to this day that residents of that area are dealing with shunting, dealing with noise, all the same things they were saying before that. So I really don't think that Irving is serious about being a good partner. And I may make a bunch of enemies today. I'm scared to look at this side of the room. And I don't like that our community has that feeling and tone to it, that if we make a decision against one of the big players, that we're going to be shunned. So I am voting against this in its entirety tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton, I'll go to you next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess very early on, any good negotiation, both parties leave somewhat unsatisfied and somewhat satisfied. In other words, I guess you try to create the best win-win scenario that you can for, I've heard enough of President Donald Trump these days.
Oh, yeah, we all have.
And I appreciate the impromptu. I guess I believe in the benefit of option number 3 as sponsored by Councillor Lowe this evening, and can support that in the sense that what it does do is, in good spirit, demonstrates that it is a win-win. I believe that not only the proponent but the city come away with a little bit of win, and at the same time a little bit of loss. There's been, I could use some teacher speak here, but one of the things is when you're looking at assessing something, you look at observations, conversations, and products. It's not exactly plan, do, check, act as the business community would often do when they're assessing projects, but when you're looking at observations, conversations, and products, some of the things I picked up out of the conversation are, look, there's an economic and operational efficiency to this parking lot. I can recognize that. It enhances access for industry, without question. It provides an economic boost. I believe in that. Creates job creation, without question. For the city and those that are questioning it, it brings in flexible land use and adaptive planning. I look at our planning and growth and community services. It provides an optimized use of space that brings not only the St. John Track and Field Club into one space, but also the hardworking men and women of St. John that work over on the mill side to traverse a very difficult streetscape and get there safely and back to their families in a timely manner. It provides a trial period, number 3 does. I think Councillor Lowe has alluded to the fact in 5 years, got 26 seconds left, in about 5 years, look, at the end of the day, the council of the day could very well say, look, this becomes permanent or it's extended. It has a reversible impact, and I think that we've heard that from the proponent, that's one of the benefits of not throwing asphalt down on here. We can reinstate it or we can build it out. It also provides mitigation of community and environmental concerns, I've noticed. So it's limited disruption. I can see a parkade. Perhaps we're bringing more flow into there and creating greater disruption for both the proponent and the community. Improved traffic management. I think they've provided third-party analysis to that, and they've provided some indications, some data points to that would point to that direction without question. It does provide some regulatory oversight, number 3 does, from the position of the city, along with the exceptional staff that we have, but also in the sense that the industry gets to provide some oversight. Hey, listen, maybe this is what we need, but after 5 years, we're done with it because the economic climate we're working in has either changed or it's increased, and we need to do more with the site. And I'll end here, and thank you, Your Worship, for the grace here. It provides a bit of a strategic integrated urban development plan that we've talked about that marries the three parties that Councillor Harris has talked about between community, industry, and a level of government that needs to bridge some gaps. And I think that this is a good example of a good pilot for future projects on how we build not only concessions, but wins to see industry win, we see community win, and at the same time, we see, most importantly, the citizens of the city of St. John win. So thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to speak on number 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ogden, I'll go to you next.
I believe Councillor Darling hadn't spoken yet. I'd be on my second one, I think.
You're on your second one? Okay,
Yeah.
well, you'll put your light back on, then I'll come around to round 2. Councillor Darling, you're up.
I just want to give a little bit of context to how I'm looking at this and going to be framing my own decision. I am someone who is very analytical at heart, coming from heavy research and stats background, so I do like to kind of put on blinders, so to speak, and really look at the information and think about how it will impact all the folks involved, and that it really comes to that balance for industry and community and the folks walking and busing. And being one of few people who has actually biked over Reversing Falls Bridge, I do know quite how treacherous it can be. And I think looking at this issue for what it is, and it is the land use at Woolastook Park, we can either look at it in pure isolation and say, is this park good to be a parking lot, or look at it in context with the Next Gen project, which is huge and so important for St. John. But at the same time, while I know there's only so much control we have over Sims Corner right now, we have to work within the realities that we live in right now. And as it stands right now, it's not a safe place to be adding increased traffic at the end of the day. And safety for me is always going to be the number one priority and concern at the end of the day, because whether it be industry or our citizens or whoever, we want them to get home to their families at the end of the night. And I think that's really, really important. And I think we can do some work together to get to the places we need so we can all be a little bit happier in our decisions. But as it stands now, making sure we're putting all our people first is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. Councillor Harris, I'm back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mayor. To Councillor Sullivan, just to respond, it is selling the residents millions of dollars short compared to what, a project like Amera, when they came through here, and what they contributed to the community for a much less substantial project, but one that was important to that company, and they wanted it to be important and impactful to the residents. But it's also unfair to ask the proponent to thread a needle that we haven't provided sort of an expectation on. I take that in my own personal failure. I haven't brought a motion to this table to put a process in place that delivers an expectation for projects of this side. Staff haven't brought us one. We haven't done that work. So there's some blame to go around, right, on what they were trying to achieve and what they were expected to achieve. So that's why I came up with that $2 million. And I'm worried, guys, I have to say, not just guys, sorry, folks, I'm worried that we're not reading the room here. They've already said they're not going to sign option 3. So we can say, hey, let's give them a win and we'll call it a 50-50 split and we'll call it partnership building. If they decide this isn't worth it, we don't develop that partnership. We don't get the community benefit that comes with an extra potential 1.5 million, which I proposed. So we can adopt motion 3 tonight. Your applicant's already told you it's a no-go. So I don't understand if that is are we just offering platitudes on a $1 billion project, which doesn't seem right to me. I understand turning it down because it doesn't meet our expectations, but I don't understand putting a motion on the floor for an option that the applicant has already rejected. And Mr. Irving himself declared as much. Now, maybe the minds will change, but that comes with the risk that you get nothing. And I would much rather trade privately held park for publicly improved park any day, every day, because you can't control private park, and we're seeing it. And we should never have been foolish enough as a body to offer up public land for private purpose around those things, around green space and park and public recreational areas. So I can't vote for option 3. because we are setting ourselves up to get nothing. And we won't know until we all leave this room. So I say we either approve this and give it to them, but give them the number we want them to hit. And say, this is the dollar figure. And we will decide how to disperse that funds to impact residents. Hopefully it goes to residents to decide what to do with that in centers like the Carleton. But I don't think option 3 is a safe bet. So I can't vote for option 3. But
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Radwan, over to you for round 2.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask a question to staff, but, Councillor Harris is absolutely right. I was going to say, if option 3 is a go, then after 5 years, how is there a guarantee that it's put back to what? A park? How do we guarantee that? What's in the city's lever to do that? Pankaj, do you want to speak to that at all? Because I feel like it's not, Andy Carson's words, it's not viable either.
Through your worship, at the end of 5 years, we would have to go down the path of enforcement at that point.
Okay, so
If the applicant does not revert the parking to the park, the route would be enforcement at that point.
So we would go down an enforcement aisle. Hopefully we wouldn't anyway, if that happened, which could lead you in court, which I certainly don't want to be there. So I guess for me, I'm the same way. For me, it's a yes or a no. And I've looked at everything. And, I've thought about economic benefit. We had multiple people speaking to economic benefit. I thought about there's 500 other new jobs there, about 3 people a household. That's about 1,500 people. All the unions told us how many members they had except for one. That was about 10,000 people. Roughly about 3 people a household. That's about 30,000 people. I've thought about all of it. And then I pulled in my reins and thought, Paula, this is a land use planning decision. Is this a good use of land? Period, full stop. And the answer for me is no. It's not a good use of land. The park is beautiful. It's breathtaking up there. Land use versus economic benefit. Sure, we have gone ahead and approved some public hearings that it was going to increase traffic. We had some risk for housing because we're in a housing crisis. We could be in an economic crisis here too. So do you think about economic benefit? The project's going ahead. I'm full support. I love to see business in St. John doing well. All business. The public benefit for temporary parking lot versus permanent parking lot, I've thought about all of that. But I don't think that we even have much in our wheelhouse to go back to a park. It could get rezoned back, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be a functional park without enforcement. So I can't go down, and Mr. Carson has actually, to quote him, said it's not viable, option 3. It's not workable, option 4, in his words. So those are not options for me as far as I'm concerned. So it's yes or it's no. The pressure on council has honestly been so unacceptable. It's just too much. I'm okay to handle pressure, don't get me wrong, but this doesn't feel like we're trying to come together as a community anyway. So it's been hard, $500,000 plus all the other benefits, so it works out to about 3.9 million, not close to 1%. I think, Mayor, you and I both mentioned 1%. $11 million as kind of a starting point, because if you're taking away benefit to the community, then you need to put back. And how much does that mean? It's hard to value it. Sometimes it's invaluable when I think of park space, especially in such a heavy industrialized city. So I'm going to vote down option 3, and I guess, unfortunately, I hate to say, because I feel like I don't really have another option, I'm going to have to vote for option 1 if that comes to life.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden, back to you.
I just wish we would, both the staff and business in the community would when they mention economic development, you would talk about poverty and education because it is tied in. It gets left out all the time. But my biggest concern besides that, because we haven't done a good job in the city, volunteers have, but we've been let down, is my biggest concern is all the people in West St. John and the traffic problems. We're going to, I don't even know how long. I asked Brent the other day how long it would take to do Sims Corner if we got the go-ahead. I asked the Premier that yesterday. I said to her, you got to make this a priority. And she told me it would be. So those are my two big concerns. And we've been told that option 3 is not an option. So I don't know how we're going to vote. We've got people against it. We've got people for other options. So I don't know how this is going to go. Doesn't look like a majority of anyway.
Sorry, Councillor Stewart, back to you for round 2.
No, motion's on the floor.
Oh, okay. All right. In that case, I've just got a few comments before we wrap it up. Just for the public and for our guests, when we talk about economic development for the city, we're talking about tax-based growth. That's what we're talking about for a city. Without tax-based growth, you can't provide what you need to provide to run your city. So that's pretty straightforward. A thriving, healthy city supports industry, and that relationship goes back to industry also supporting the city. That is a two-way street that we both need to be working on. A lot of the letters that we got talked about workforce attraction and morale of workforce. And that translates for us, from the other side of the coin, to population growth and quality of life. It's the same thing that we're asking for, that you're asking for. So what's the middle of the road when we get there? We talked about poverty, heard a lot about poverty tonight. I said this already. I bought my house on the peninsula 40 years ago, and I sent 4 kids to an inner city school. I've seen poverty, and I've seen 1 and 2 kids live in poverty, and I still see 1 and 2 kids living in poverty in that neighborhood. So what has been the benefit? So this is what we're looking for. What are the benefits? We need the tax-based growth so we can provide those amenities for our children, for the city, etc. We can increase your taxes. That's not real tax-based growth. Nobody likes that. We've dropped the tax rate here from 178, which you spoke about earlier. It's now 155. It's 23.5 cents in the last just over 4 years. That's a lot, and it's been hard work to get there. And we have a report from Gardner Pinfold that says the more industry you put in your city, the more it will drive your residential out. Just heard on the radio today that Quispamsis is growing so fast, they're going to have to put apartment buildings out there. So we see that drive residential out. But industry is good for your city. It's good for your city. And so, but we need to be good partners, and we do need to outline what our expectations are for industry if we're going to work with industry. Industry needs to have a social license, and that solves a lot of this conflict. And it's built on trust and integrity, and it's built on communications and transparency. And that's what we need as a team if we're going to go together and really make St. John an amazing place to live. So that's my few little comments on this evening. I do appreciate everyone being here. I do have a motion on the floor, and it has been seconded. And so I will call the question. So on the motion that is on the floor, which is option 3, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? So we have 5 opposed. I'll let the city councilor. Team, how can you do this to me? I will support option 3. I mean, that gives the option back to industry to say if they want to go with that or they don't want to go with it. I'll put the ball back in their court with that, but I would support option 3. So that is it for this evening. Councillor Ogden. Councillor Lowe.
Move adjournment.
Move adjournment. You got a seconder on that? Thanks. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
No.